Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. We're glad to have you. Looks like we've got a great crowd. We're going to have a great meeting today. I want to welcome everybody who's here. I want to welcome everybody who's on Zoom. We only have 4 people on Zoom right now, or three. Betty is helping with her sister and brother-in-law. Their home health care people packed up and didn't show up today, and so Betty is joining us remotely. Thank you, Betty. Glad you're here. Mr. Mahan, do you have a camera? Hello, Mr. Mahan. I don't guess Mr. Mahan can hear us. And there's Mr. McGrath. Thank you, sir. Glad you're here. Well, there we go. We'll catch up with Chris a little bit later. I talked to Chris earlier in the week. He is doing well. He's in great spirits. His leg is recovering. He's out of rehab. He's home. He's just not getting around as well as he could. But we're really glad that he's joining us remotely. So welcome, Chris. We're glad you're here. Guys, I want to welcome some new members that we've got that just joined up over at Plano. Russ, could you step up, please? And introduce yourself to the crowd and let us know. You can do it from there. You don't have to step all the way up here. Okay?
I'm Russ Elliott.
Not that, not you. Yeah, you can go sit down.
And just getting started on that. Started originally with my great father got me. Welcome. Looks like they're fantastic.
Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Good job. Thanks for joining. And I hope we live up to your expectations. Ken, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Ken Elliott. I guess we're brothers. I'm the younger brother. My grandpa got in his training. And one of the checkies got a pair of socks.
Yeah.
So, like him, we're just getting started, get going in, and I don't know how often I'll be out here. I live over in Rockwall.
Oh, okay.
I come down to visit him post weekend, so we alternate.
Yep.
Depending on how the meetings fall.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. Welcome, Kent. So a little information for you both. Division 1. This is where you are here today. Where's your home, Russ?
Right here in Arlington.
In Arlington. Okay. All right. So Division 1 line is from like DFW Airport, west to Abilene, north to the Red River, and south to Hillsborough. It's an area about the size of South Carolina. We have roughly 180 members in our division. All right. Division 3 runs from DFW Airport east to just a little bit shy of the Louisiana line, or right at the Louisiana line, Sabine River, north of the Red River, and south to about Lufkin area. Okay, that's Division 3. They have a few more members than we do, but it's, 10, 20 members roughly difference between the two divisions. Isn't that about right, Dwayne? Yeah, okay. So, Ken, your address is actually Division 3 member, but that's fine. You're welcome to be here. There's several Division 3 members that are here today. We welcome everybody to come to our meeting. Our meetings are always the second Saturday of the month. Okay? Now, Mr. Steckler, we need to add Ken to our friends of list because he won't get our divisional notifications because he's not a Division 1 member unless we add him to our friends of list. Can you help us with that a little bit later? Okay. And then Division 3 meetings are always the third Saturday of the month. Except for this month. Yeah, because of the Plano train show, right? Well, no, this month. Oh, the O gauge meet.
Come on.
Okay. All right. Anyway, typically they're the third. Let me put it like that. Traditionally, unless something happens, they're the third Saturday of the month, and they meet over in Allen. Is the correct city where it is, just a little bit north of where the Plano train show was. Okay, so over in that area. So you guys have can pick from either one, or hit double duty, and a lot of folks do that. They go to this meeting on one Saturday and the next one on the next Saturday if you want to get an extra helping. So that's it. But anyway, welcome. Glad you're here. Yes, sir. Mark, where's Mark?
Back here.
Back here. Yes, Mark, please stand up and share all of the pertinent information about yourself.
In H-O-N-N.
Well, last name. Mark what?
Richardson,
I'm sorry?
with the Denton Club. Running H-O-N-N right now. Would like to try and get into G eventually, but that's the real piece.
Okay. Thank you. Glad you're here. Another new member. He joined at the Plano train show as well. Yes, I did hear that. Yeah. Yeah. What's your point? Hey, we have a lively crew here, okay, and everybody enjoys stabbing each other a little bit or poking the bear a little bit. So, hey, that's great, and thank you for being here. And I wanted to stress that, guys. I am very much a person that is, you get out of something what you put into it. It is all about that. If you say I don't have time for anything. Okay, we're getting feedback. Thank you. If you don't say you don't have time for something, then that's lower on your priority scale, and you will find time for the things that are important to you, right? Okay, whether it's grandkids or family or trains or whatever, if it's important to you, you'll find time to do it. That's just pretty much plain and simple. We hope you do that with the NMRA. And to that point, I'm glad you're all here. You're showing that initiative, but we really would like to see you guys bring someone to another meeting. There's nothing like creating more friendships within the hobby and with people who enjoy the same thing you do. I was sharing a story at the Plano train show with a guy who was a potential member. And it's not all about the trains, guys. It's about the people. How many of you would agree with that? Yes? Okay. Mr. Mahan is a prime example. Okay. And he and I've talked, so I'm not overextending my boundaries with him. I don't believe. I don't have the Zoom up anymore. Mr. Mahan, are you still there? Oh man, we got a whole bunch more people today. Bob Mangrum, he's joined us for a long ways. Cole, unfortunately, his back is killing him, and so he's joining us remotely. But Chris, I hope you're there. There's Mr. Hager. How you doing, sir? Glad you're here. We've really got everything kind of popped on up here, so that's great. Anyway, there was a circumstance that happened at St. Louis at the National Convention. Mr. Mahan fell and broke his leg. When that happened, the NMRA machine went into action. We started helping him every single way we possibly could. And first off, we got some help and tried to help him with the hospitalization and stuff like that, make sure that his family was taken care of. We were trying to figure out a way to get him home. While he was in the hospital, unfortunately, he found out that there was he had a form of cancer they diagnosed it while they found his broken leg. Okay, so double whammy. Now he's out of town. He can't get back home. We can't figure out how to do it. Well, fortunately, a few years back, Daryl and I were on the board together, and we were able to put a thing together for Care Flight to be to members of the Texas Western Club right here. If you're a member of the club, for $20 a year, you can be a member of Care Flight. $12, excuse me. I paid $20 last time. What the heck? Apply that to my dues. Apply that to my dues, will you? Okay, I'm just saying.
That was a tip.
That, yeah.
You got the special.
Well, I got the special rate. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So anyway, if you're a member of the Texas Western, you can participate to be a member of Care Flight, which not only gets you emergency air helicopter service in case of a dire emergency, they also have fixed service from hospital to hospital or transferring ground service. They can't pick you up in their ambulances, but they can transfer you. And the way this whole thing works is if you're a member, you send your insurance, they send your insurance bill, whatever the insurance doesn't pay, Care Flight comes back with a zero balance to you. It doesn't cost you anything over than what the insurance pays. So you never see a bill. Okay. And I don't know if you checked the cost of what it costs to have a helicopter fly you emergency in, but it isn't cheap. The transfer, we had another member that needed a heart procedure done. They couldn't do it at the location where he was. He got transferred from one location to another. Didn't cost him a dime for ground service. Well, another aspect of Care Flight centers around a fixed wing service, and it's an air ambulance fixed wing service. Because Chris Mahan was a member here, it clicked with me, and a lot of folks didn't know about the fixed wing service. It's not really highly publicized, but they have it. And so I got in touch with the CEO of Care Flight, just recently retired. He told me the specific person I needed to talk to. We got them in touch with the Mahans, and they were able to send a air ambulance to St. Louis, pick him up with his broken leg, and fly him and his daughter back here, and had everything on the airplane that would be needed in case of a traumatic event. And if they need to set the bird down, they could have anywhere rather than on a commercial flight. And how do you fly on a commercial flight with a broken leg? Good point, right? So this is all because of the NMRA. Well, there's more to the story. I told you he was diagnosed with cancer. So we've got a gentleman that'll be joining here in a little while, retired oncologist, Dr. Michael Ross. I contacted Dr. Ross. I said, can you be available just to receive a phone call from them if they'd like to talk? He goes, absolutely, no problem. Because sometimes having somebody you know to give you a reassuring word makes a lot of difference. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So Dr. Ross and them hook up. Well, not only did Dr. Ross, excuse me a second. Old speaker's trick. When you feel like you're starting to get choked up, drink something because you can't cry while you're drinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actively swallowing. Let me put it like that.
I've got a bottle of whiskey that says otherwise.
Yeah, there's country songs about that, right? Anyway, Dr. Ross, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what his son did for a living. His son's an oncologist now, and he's taken personal responsibility for the Mahans, and he's treating their case personally. Guys, this is what the NMRA is all about, okay? It's not just about the trains. It's about the relationships. It's about the friendships. It's about the people. It's about things that you get the opportunity to do because you're a member of this organization that people don't understand. So to our new members, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you understand that you've now become part of a bigger family. And if you need anything to help you, we're here to help you not only in trains, but in any other things that may come up. Yes, sir.
Do we have a psychiatrist?
Well, we're working on that member. It's out there. Okay. Yes, sir.
Asking for a brother.
Yeah.
Is there a divorce lawyer?
I can give you legal references. Yeah. Mr. Gradke, I'm sure Christina's probably knows somebody in the field that would be a legal counsel if needed, right? We've got a whole myriad of network of stuff, guys. You have no idea. Yes, sir, Mr. Crank.
Is that $12 people NRA members or
Texas Western Club members. Okay, another good reason to join the Texas Western, right? And I know you're probably Railroad Club poor from all the ones you already joined. Yes, sir.
So that Mike is we approached when we were doing train shows. Texas Western put on train shows. We approached Jim Schwartz, who was CEO at that time, about being a sponsor of our train show.
Yes.
He was Careflight was one of the sponsors of our 2017 show.
Right.
And at the same time, that's when he offered the club the deal. And truthfully, $12 is great, but it's only anybody can join for $49 a year.
Yeah, that's true.
And considering that a flight in a helicopter, they pick you up off the street somewhere and fly you somewhere, you're talking about right around or over $40,000.
Yeah.
So that one little flight, I don't care how far it is, it's about 40 grand.
Yeah.
So $49 a year is still a bargain.
Oh, absolutely.
That covers the household.
Yeah, it does cover the house.
Everybody lives
Exactly
in
right.
their house.
Everybody lives in your house. If you're interested in that, get in touch with me. I can tell you who to get in touch with over at CareFlight, and we can go that route. So anyway, moving on. I'd like to thank the Texas Western Club for allowing us to meet here and working with our division on an ongoing basis. To that point, I'd like to give Mr. David Crumpton, the president of the club, just a couple of minutes.
First of all, I really enjoyed that story. I'm intimately involved with what happened with Chris and the interactions that were going on with Mike and the family. That's right. This is a big family. Trains are part of it, but we're hoping that we create relationships and friendships. Welcome to the Texas Western Model Railroad Club. You see some new faces here. This is our club. We've been in existence 25 years. However, from a previous location that we had to vacate, we had to start up here in 2014. So basically, the old layout was about 98% finished. Long story short, we had to vacate that building, start from scratch again here. How painful. So we've been working many hours during the week to get to this point that you see our layout, which is runnable on the lower level and upper level now. We're about ready to start putting fascia up to cover up all the wiring and all the exposed stuff. The important thing for you to take with you today, before you leave, walk around the layout and see some of the changes in scenery. There's been a lot of scenery work going on, especially in the Houston area. And I'm going to have John Garfield and Ken Kaiser stand up just a minute. You two guys stand up. John Garfield has been doing the track work in the Houston area, and Ken Kaiser has been doing a lot of the scenery work. And then both of them together have been working on scenery too, around the Houston depot and the track work that will go under a platform. You see styrofoam risers sitting there. There's a platform that'll sit there, and then the city of Houston will sit on top of that. I know that's not prototypical, but that's the way we have to build it, build the space. But before you get out of here today, take a sweep back and take a look at what Ken and John have done.
And they are.
And in the yard area too. Fantastic work. We're really pleased with people that have come through and made very positive comments. You know, as modelers, we tend to look at things with a very critical modeler's eye. And we see every little thing that could be wrong. People that come through and look at a train layout, they don't come through with critical eyes. They come through with, I want to see this thing. You know, a great example was Steve Grabke's family came through when we had a garage sale a few weeks ago, and they wanted a grand tour. So I took them around, and they were amazed at how you could make, in that city of Houston area, have a road that looks like it goes underground. It goes under an underpass. Well, to modelers, oh yeah, we know how that works. We know how to do that. But for them, they were fascinated, and they were very complimentary of the work that Ken and John had done. Sometimes when we look at each other's work, we can be too critical. Let's try to be more positive and more coaching than we are being critical.
That will make us better modelers. That'll help us to influence people better. People don't like to be beat with a stick. They'd rather have a little positive reinforcement. That helps you grow. Beat you with a stick don't help too much. So, welcome to the Texas Western. I'll get off the soapbox here for a second. Welcome to the Texas Western. We're glad you're here. If you have any questions while you're here, if you're not a member and would like to be, Trapper, would you wave your... He's busy. He's busy at the sign in is? Oh, you... Trapper, the big guy over there, 6'5", 6'6", depending on how beat down he is. He is our chief administrative officer. So if you're interested in becoming a member, talk to Trapper. He'll give you the paperwork, get you started on the path to become a member here. Mike, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Moving along. I just got a text in from Chris Mahan. He said, Mike, I don't have audio or video. Thank you for the kind words. The NMRA is family, and I'm proud to be a member. So that's from Chris. Y'all might give him a round of applause. He can hear you. I want to give a report from the Plano Train Show. Russ, would you step up and give us a little information about a wrap up on the Plano Train Show for the fall? Every fall, the Division 1 is responsible for the NMRA booth, and at the January show, Division 3 is responsible for the NMRA booth. So this was our turn, and Russ was our chairman for that. So Russ, take it away.
Well, we had a great turnout, especially Saturday. We had a lot of people come by. We had a total of 10 new members from what I gathered. We're kind of busy doing a lot of things, especially on the test track, the major bit. Running for train, a lot of trains. We had a lot of interaction with a lot of new modelers coming in. We had the opportunity to get this Waller's Build the World kit. One thing I did on it was kind of assemble the building, and my wife just kind of took it.
The folks at Walters sent us 2 cases of these Build-A-World modules. And what we did during the Plano show was start to build this. All of the materials that you see on the module here came in the box as it sits. And the tools, all of the landscaping material, all of the stuff for water, track, everything was in the box, and it comes to just that way. This is their new thing that they're doing. It's kind of like a book of the month club, and you can subscribe to it, and they will let you do it, build it out this way. This was all done by Deborah, Russ's wife. She did the whole thing and started it on Saturday, worked on it on Saturday, all day Sunday, and then finished it up by Wednesday. So we're going to continue. We've got plenty of these. We're going to continue to build them at the train shows going forward.
Yeah, the train show, that was a huge attraction because there were a lot of young kids that were coming up, and they were really engrossed in what was going on in the process. I think it's something we should permanently add on to the shows, having something going on. When we do clinics and things like that are great. This little module thing really got a ton of attention. I think it actually told me this was often so difficult, it's not easy. But the kit makes it so much simpler for somebody that's not ever done anything to build something, and it's also pretty quick. But the show all was great. I'm kind of on hold to be over the show from now on. I don't mind. I enjoyed it. I think there was a lot of interaction there. I appreciate everybody showing up and supporting, even though they have a list of full. There's a whole lot to worry about it. So I appreciate everybody who showed up and helped. It was a good time. We were there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And Saturday was probably, I think, the show a couple of times, and
It was busy, yeah.
very, very busy.
Yeah, it was, according to the show people, it was back, the Saturday attendance was back to pre-COVID days. So that was good.
And all the plans and stuff we had were pretty good turnout, but on the last one, only 4 in there, but it's still back for new models, we're coming in to the hobby, so I want to see, make stuff that we could afford old. But that was a great show, and I appreciate it, so.
Did you bring those pop-up signs today? That's all right. Next month's good. Thank you, sir.
All right. Everybody thank Russ for his participation and to his statement about being voluntold. It was a request. It wasn't, I asked him if he would like to because he did such a good job. But we now have a permanent train show manager moving forward. So that's it's going to be a lot better organized and will continue to get better.
That was a just, I don't do anything.
There you go. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, Russ. All right. So next, Mr. Gradke, can you go over our notifications list, or Mr. Steckler, whichever one is going to do that? We've been, and to preface this, for the last 5 or 6 months, I've been getting comments from people. I'm not getting the notification. I'm not getting emails about the meeting. I'm not, you don't participate. You're a Division 3 guy. Okay, so what is your, that's fine. I get you mixed up. So, Mr. Aiken, what is your email address? Mr. Steckler, can you tell us whether that was delivered or not? Mr. Gradke, can you tell us if that was delivered or not?
Which Aiken is that?
Casey. Actually, they both go to the same email address.
Well, I have a separate one, but yes, there's 2 different email addresses, but one of them is both.
Okay. Is that Mesa Man the one that you share?
No.
Okay. So, Mr. Gradke, can you tell us what the status of
We do not have the Mason address in our.
Mesa Man, MESA?
We do not have it in our area. We only have one, which is, so you have it on that list up there that I gave you.
Okay. So this should be the Division 1 membership list, right?
No, that's a mailing list. That is not membership.
Okay.
Just look up Aiken.
And I did, and it's not on here. So the question is, why isn't it on our list?
The reason is one is in Division 3,
Right.
and one is not a member of Division.
That's
1.
right. We had a membership lapse.
Well, not anymore.
As of when did you pay your dues?
On the way to the train show.
Okay, Okay. Now we're starting to get to the bottom of this, right? And so
You don't get on that list unless you pay your dues.
next month, when you become an active member of Division 1 again, you'll start getting stuff again. Fair enough? All right. Mr. Steckler, go ahead. There you go. Yeah.
My fault.
Steve Bratke has done a phenomenal job migrating the email system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It was painful.
Like I said, he's done a wonderful job.
It'd be okay if we didn't have any members.
Yeah!
Stop paying.
And in that case, I'm done, right? Okay. One of the issues that we've been having, people say they didn't get the email, et cetera. We use MailChimp now. And the report showed that the last emails that have gone out, 82 people out of 156 opened the email. Okay. Those of you in the other 48%, you did receive it. You just didn't open it. Maybe it's in a spam folder. Maybe it's in a junk folder. All right. This afternoon, I'm going to send out a test email. All right. If you don't have it by tonight, go to the division homepage, go to the leadership teams, look for contact. I'm near the bottom. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. All right. Send me an email. I didn't receive the test message. I'll check to see if you're on the list, what your email address is, et cetera, et cetera. All right. it's a good idea. I mean, something's gonna go out at least once a month, if not more often, if nothing else.
At least twice.
It's twice a month, it's
You're
usually
gonna
twice a
get the
month.
newsletter.
And you're gonna get a notification about this meeting,
So,
at least.
yeah. Again, go to the homepage, click, hey, Dave, I'm not getting any emails. And let me check, and Steve and I'll try to figure out what the problem is. Okay? So keep an eye out for an email, just say test email or something like that this afternoon, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Especially the week before the meeting, that's when things go out. And if it's there, move it to your inbox, or your program may have you able to make a whiteboard, which means
A white
it's
list.
real, a white list.
A white
It's
list,
a real email and it's not a junk.
There is an email address on the email you get.
Right.
Add that address to your contacts list.
Right.
And that way he's one of your friends automatically.
Because these guys have been doing this for a couple of months, and my feeling is they're probably sending it.
Oh, I know we're sending it.
Right, something on your computer is blocking it.
Well, or you're just not checking your email. But as you say, it's likely in a spam folder or a junk folder. You may be checking your email, but, oh, it's spam, it's junk, I just deleted it. If you haven't gotten anything to the NMRA in a month, please check, see if it's there. And if, hey, it's not there, drop me an email, and I'll try to see if we can't figure out what the problem is.
Thanks, Dave.
Assuming you're paid.
Thanks, Dave, appreciate it. All right, next, financial report, Mr. Brannon.
Okay, as of October 1st, we have about $22,065 in our primary checking account. And that has been holding pretty steady throughout the year. I mean, we're breaking even on refreshments, but please feed the kitty for your coffee and donuts. We do appreciate that. And we get some revenues from membership in NMRA, things like along that line.
Receivables?
There's probably, well, we've got $1,500 or so in money that's owed to us from the convention expenses.
I thought it was a little bit more than that.
And 2,000,
2,000, I think.
you
is
know,
more
in
like
that
it.
range. And I have some other checks I received this morning that are still ready to be put in the bank, which probably, I don't know, exactly, I didn't look at it, I don't know how much it was, but figure $100, 150, something like that. So financially, we're in pretty good shape.
Typically, what are our expenditures per month? Dollar wise? $100?
Yeah, at the most, I mean, usually it's about 50 a month at the end of the year when we have parties, Christmas parties, things like that, it jumps up several hundred, but we're
We need to
not,
talk about
we're not spending a lot of money.
it. We need to talk about the Christmas party.
That's a side conversation. All right, there is something I need to bring to the floor of the meeting. The Texas Western, our host, has approached us. They are considering dropping their internet access at this building. If they do that, we can no longer do, I've lost my Zoom people again. We can no longer do our Zoom meetings and record this stuff. We can record it, but we can't do it live. So that prohibits us from bringing in clinicians from outside across like we've done in the past, and things like that. They have approached us and presented us with a proposal whereby the division, because let me back up for a second. They have no use for the internet themselves as a club. People can get stuff on their phone if that's what they want to do, but they have no use for a high-speed internet service here as a club.
They don't use Wi-Fi?
They can do Wi-Fi, but it doesn't have to be internet. Okay, for their layout.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have approached the division and did so last month after our meeting, and I tabled this until this meeting so that I can present it to the membership. They've presented a proposal that we split the internet bill with them moving forward. The cost of their internet is $108 a month. It would cost us $54 a month to maintain where we are moving forward. I would like to entertain any discussion that you guys have on the topic, because it's something that I don't think, even though the bylaws of our division give the director authority to make those kinds of decisions, this is a long-term commitment over a long period of time, and I thought it would be best for transparency if we brought it to the floor. So any questions or discussions on this?
Pay for it.
Okay, Mr. Grimes,
Hotspot what?
hotspot, not for this. Yeah, it won't, it's not, the bandwidth's not wide enough to carry this Zoom call. Yes, sir.
I've only been here a year. Do you have to pay to use the facilities if we have our meeting here?
We make a donation from the division back to them. It is not a set amount as to, that they charge us. They are very gracious, and it's been a very symbiotic relationship between the division and the club. If we were to go somewhere else, we'd probably be looking at per month anywhere from $100 to $150 rental for a location to have a meeting once a month. We do not have that expense.
My feeling would be they're willing to share. It's very reasonable.
Okay, Mr. Brandon.
Let me make a comment about going to different locations. We did that a couple years ago when this facility was not available to us. We had to rent a meeting room like in Hotham City and
North Richland Hills.
North Richland Hills. And I think the Hotham City thing cost us $100 that day to rent the hall. And keep in mind, logistically, we keep our refreshments here, we keep some video equipment here, things like that. So it's very convenient to meet here on a regular basis.
And you can run trains.
And you get to run trains that goes after.
Mr. Steckler.
Mike, if we agree to do it, I'll pay for the first 2 months, so it'll only cost the division 10 months.
That's very gracious and generous. Thank you very much.
Take your name with that.
Yeah, that's very kind. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, air visibility outside this building. Gordon, your contributors from outside is one of the brightest stars about this division gathering. I'm in favor of trying to keep it up.
All right. Does anybody want to call the question?
I'll call the question.
Okay. A question's been called as to a vote as to whether or not we proceed with a monthly donation from our 501c3 to their 501c3. At the end of the year, they have offered to give us a accounting of that we can put into our books for IRS purposes. And this also continues our work as a 501c3 of working with other 501c3s for education. That's what we're in. That's our 501c3. So anyway, all right. So the question's been called. All in favor of participating with a monthly contribution back to the Texas Western for internet, please raise your hands. All opposed? Seeing none, it passes. All right. Mr. Crumpton and Mr. Brannon will take care of that. Thank you for your help, and this carries forward here on our Zoom call. I think that's tremendous vote, and thank you for your endorsement on that. Let's see. I was approached earlier. Yes, sir.
If you want to know.
Oh, thank you for everybody who's on the vote. Thank you for your vote, Cole and Bob. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I got a phone call from the BNSF social media manager Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. One of our members, Reggie Thomas, who works in the IT department over there, gave the social media manager my name to hook up and help promote the fact that the BNSF is having a model railroad only photography contest. And there are prizes to be given away. based on that, it's in conjunction with next month, they're gonna announce the winner next month in conjunction with National Model Railroad Month. And so it is open to photographs with any BNSF equipment and or heritage BNSF equipment. Frisco, Fort Worth and Denver, Great Northern, Northern Pacific, Santa Fe, any of those, just settle down. Okay, it's all good. I'm getting to Santa Fe. Okay? It's all, the S is way down the list. Okay, I'll bet.
Except it starts with an A, Mike.
Hey, well, we're just going it by its nicknames, all right? But you're right. All right, so anyway, I believe that the contest closes on October 16th. You got a week. I'm notified when I got notified. Now, the original rules were that you had to post it on Facebook, in their Facebook page, and or on Instagram with a hashtag, yada, yada, yada. After a short discussion, I explained to him that the demographic that he is approaching here in our organization, that in a survey I did of our membership, I am the third youngest member of this division, and I'm 66 in March. Most of our people don't do Instagram. They don't do hashtag whatever. So after that discussion, I said, if you don't allow people to email you photographs to your email address, you are grossly limiting the participation of the people that we're targeting. He goes, I think you're right. He went back and changed the rules of the contest. They really want us to participate. So I am going to send out an email probably this afternoon or tomorrow that gives you all of the information about the contest and how you can enter and all that stuff. And there's a website, the BNSF's got it on their website. You can go and see the contest rules, and it shows you how to enter and all that kind of stuff. So I would urge you to send in some photographs. You may win, who knows? But just participation. That's what they're really looking for. They're going to do honorable mention, like first, second, third, honorable mention, etc. Yes, sir.
Is this a one-check deal, or is this something you're planning on doing annually?
I don't know the answer to that. But I would think that if it gets good traction, they would probably renew it year after year. But that's a very good question. Okay. All right. So be looking for that correspondence coming out that tells you all about it. You might also see it coming from NMRA National, because I have now connected them with our social media director for the entire organization, and she is working with them to try to get that promoted. So that's it. Let's see. Dr. Ross, can you give us some information about membership, please, sir?
46 here today.
46. Guys, we're averaging 45, upwards of 45 every meeting, and it's building. I'd really like to see us bump 75. That's 30 people. If everybody brought a friend, we're there, okay? I'd really like to see that happen. So if we can do that. So please strive for that, and we'll see how that goes. Anybody have any questions or answers? Q&A. Problems you're having with modeling, things that you're struggling with, that you need help with, that we can possibly field from the floor. Yes, sir.
I have a question, because I'm a little OCD, and I've been subscribing to Model Railroad since 1959, and I think most of us know that the quality has somewhat changed recently, and they've pushed their website product and stuff, so I'm wondering how many people have stopped subscribing to Model Railroad or print, and if they have, what have they switched to?
Okay, John?
I haven't switched to anything, I just dropped it.
You just dropped it.
Just dropped it.
I'm gonna drop mine in March. My subscription drops.
Yes.
Okay. You did renew Craftsman, but not the other one. Just right.
I dropped print several years ago and went to
Digital. Okay.
But I get all of them.
You get all of the CommBot?
Trains.
Yep, everything.
Classic.
The whole family.
Whole 9 yards.
The whole family.
The commissioner chat.
Yeah, Mr. Stickler.
I didn't drop it yet, but I did subscribe years ago to Model Railroad Hobbyist.
Right. Free version or the?
Both.
Both.
Both. And I find it, I mean, it's not as good as it used to be, but I find it a very valuable adjunct to both RMC and Model Railroad.
And to that point, Joe Fugate, who's the editor of Model Railroad Hobbyist, is a very strong supporter of next year's convention. And we're working out all the details and the dollar value of how much he's participating, but he is giving us advertising for the national convention in all of his platforms. And in January, he's coming down, he's staying at my house for a week, and he's going to be coming in to shoot layouts for content for his Model Railroad Hobbyist online magazine, as well as Trainmaster Television. So it's going to be in there. So that would be it. Yes, sir.
Transitioning from print and digital, pure digital, I find that the 100 pounds of magazines I accumulate, I don't really need that many pages in hard copy to use.
Sure. Understood.
Digital, I get the content, so check back in a year and I'll let you know I liked it.
There you go. By the way, I heard there was a suggestion made, and I can't remember exactly where it was. Maybe it was a national board meeting or something. I don't remember. But we all have old print copies of magazines. And I'd be willing to bet that many of us make trips on an occasion to see a doctor. And if you are so inclined, take 4 or 5 copies of a Model Railroader magazine there and drop them off in the lobby to go along with the Vogue and the Cosmopolitan and the Women's Daily and everything else that's there. Okay, so you can put them in there, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it may spur some membership. Who knows? But anyway, just an idea. Mr. Zink.
If you have a business start, Division 1 or a club, go ahead and staple that to the copy of the magazine.
Yeah. And Mr. Zink, you owe me a phone call. I called you twice this past week to give you some information about something that I'm fixing to mention now. Mr. Richardson.
Until I interrupt you, all the talk about magazines, guys, even though it's the narrow gauge and shoreline Gazette, really give some consideration to looking through there. There is some fantastic modeling that is not just narrow gauge specific in there. There's a lot to be had. Also, White River puts out 2 different annuals every year, the ON30 and the HON3 annuals, and both of those are packed with really, really good models.
Dwayne and I both contribute to the HON3 annual every year, and I'm currently finishing up and talking to the editor. I'm fortunate enough and honored enough that they're featuring my layout in the annual this year as a featured layout in that magazine. So I would urge you to take a look at that. Last year, I did a thing about 3D printing. Dwayne did one on a work train. Yeah, you've been in all of them forever. Okay, so anyway, I want to make an announcement. If you saw in announcements from the region, Chuck Ellis in Austin, the Great Northern Pacific Railroad, was scheduled to today and tomorrow have a sale of his layout. He's downsizing. The layout is being dismantled. And if you've never attended, yes, sir? That's what this announcement was about. The sale was supposed to be today and tomorrow. Due to planning and trying to get everything put together, he has asked that everybody be notified that that sale is next Saturday and Sunday. But if you've never seen his layout, it is chock full of amazing structures. He's got locomotives out the wazoo. Chuck is the kind of guy that he got the fine scale miniature plans and built the fine scale miniature buildings from scratch using their plans. He didn't use the kits. And they are structurally amazing. I am fortunate enough that I'm going to have a couple of his buildings be transported and make arrival on my layout on the narrow gauge side, Dwayne. So they will make a nice fit. Yes, sir?
If nothing else, Roxanne visit, he is one of the layouts that Alan Keller did videos on. It's a great layout, and once he strips it, it's forever.
Yep. Chuck is starting to have mobility problems. The layout is downstairs. They don't need the house as big as they have it, and so these as the email that went out earlier, at some point in a model railroader's life, you got to realize that you got to give it up at some point. You know, so he's doing that now. All of the buildings and stuff are reasonably priced. Mr. Zink, the reason I was trying to get a hold of you is all of that mining equipment in that mine is now up for sale.
Yeah. Crazy thing about the mine, if you haven't been there, it's the size of a sauna.
Yep, that's about right.
And it's about as deep as a sauna.
And the force perspective that he uses with the equipment, large equipment on top and small equipment down the bottom, really makes your eyes feel how deep that goes into that strip mine. So I guess it's a strip mine. Is that considered a strip mine? Okay. So I was trying to get in touch with you to let you know that if you want any of that mining equipment before somebody else grabs it, move quick and I will give you the contact information if you're so inclined. Okay. All right. Tips and tricks. I've got a couple. We mentioned Mr. Fugate a little while ago. If you've not seen his information about track cleaning, he's got a whole series on track cleaning, and he's done all kinds of information and studies and analyses on the best way to keep your track clean and make it conductive positively. Okay? And one of the things that he suggests is, if you're not familiar with it, I'm bringing it up, CRC makes a green can of contact cleaner. However, this can is contact cleaner and protectant. And that's the key difference. And what you want to do with this is, first off, clean every wheel on every engine and car before you put it back on the layout. Then go over your layout and wipe this protectant and cleaner. There you go. That's the can of it right there. Okay. You want to wipe it on the inside of the head of the rail, not the whole rail, just the inside contact point. Okay, all the way down the inside of both rails. You do that, that is where the locomotive strikes the rail for conductivity, right?
Where it picks up the gunk.
Yeah, where it picks up the gunk. Now, the thing about that is the black gunk that we get off of our rail is really arcing. That's really what happens. It's a point where the electricity is arcing from one to the other. But if you can put that contact cleaner and protectant on there, he's talking about cleaning your track maybe once a year instead of every time you want to do a layout run. So this is amazing breakthrough. It goes into, and if you've never seen his studies and stuff, he goes into the electrical conductivity of all these different types of things. And I mean, he really did the analyses on this. Comment?
You'll see quotes like that in MRH. You'll also, but if you go to his book called Trackworks, he covers the whole gamut, everything from what people have done in the past, like mineral spirits and other things like that, all life that's been around and used producing for a long time, all the way to various contact cleaners, and the product that has worked very well also called NOAX. And so in NOAX, I have a couple of people that I've used that on. We have to make
So the technology,
Technology and the use of the right materials makes it a whole lot easier for reliable operation. The other thing, moving on to a different tip and trick. Yes, sir?
I want to make a comment about what we were just talking about. I visited with H.D. Connor when I first got in the hobby, that he was one of the first MMRs, if not the first. He told me that he was about ready to get out of the hobby. He was so sick and tired of contact and dirty track. And he had figured out that if he put a drop of WD-40 on each rail, that he would distribute and he would solve his connection problem. So I went home and tried that. And from that point on, I could never get a train up one of the hills on my.
Too slippery.
Yeah. I cleaned it and cleaned it and cleaned. I never again was able to climb a train.
So just out of, and there's another tip for you, and thanks for mentioning that, Jim. WD-40. Okay, do you know the story on WD-40? That's correct. When NASA was trying to figure out compounds to be a water dispersant in space, they finally hit on something on the 40th attempt. Water displacement, WD-40. That's how that came to the pass. Do you know what it is? Fish oil. That's exactly right. Here's a hint for you. If you're painting anything and you get paint on your hands, okay, spray your hands with WD-40 and then just wash them. And the paint disappears off your fingers that quick, off your hands. That's another good thing, yep. Glue and stuff like that. But if you get paint on your hands from painting something because you didn't put on your rubber gloves before you started, then that's a way to get it off.
Clean your teeth.
Okay, I'm not going to go there. All right. So thank you very much. Too much information, David. You've held true to yourself. I appreciate that. All right. All right. Next, I don't know if any of you have tried a new found uncoupler method, but if you have not tried using the dental brushes. The tiny dental brushes, okay? They will go on the end of a pick stick, the blunt end, obviously, but they will slide on there and you can put them in there and the brush part will go straight down into the coupler. You twist it and it breaks apart a couple that quick on a pick stick. It beats trying to hit it with the pointed end of the stick. The brush is non-corrosive. It doesn't damage anything. And it goes right into the middle of the coupler. You just twist it a little bit, and the coupler comes apart at any switching location.
And the end scale picks up the cuts.
Well, we're not talking about the scale that's not big enough. Okay.
It's the normal scale.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I will tell you this, and Mr. Cowles is aware of this. At the next year's convention, we're working very diligently to have the Operations Roadshow come in. We've got, Dwayne, 10,000 square feet?
Yeah.
We have a 10,000 square feet of exhibit hall space inside the convention hall that will be occupied by layouts. Right now, in 24 hours, Gordy put out a message to the Operation Roadshow folks, which is in scale. And in a 24-hour period, they absorbed 1,400 square feet and are asking for more. So
We got them set up for about
1,800, okay? And that there's no limitation on that, correct? I think they're going to come back for about this much. Okay? I'm just planting a bug. All right?
There are several things depending on all of that.
Yes. So to Mr. Grimes, much delight, we are putting the N back into NMRA. So there you go. How you like that?
That's fine.
Okay. All
I
right.
think it's great.
Any other tips and tricks that anybody wants to throw out?
Yeah, how do you use this stuff? It's a spray.
I would put it on a Q-tip and wipe it on myself.
You would?
Yes.
Actually, if you've got a small piece of denim, like wood material.
Yep.
That works real good. Spray it on the denim, and you just wipe it like that.
Wipe it down like that. Yep.
Be wet.
On the inside railhead. Yep.
If you wipe it with a soft piece of denim, you're gonna get all over the rail.
Yeah.
So, track is clean first. What's the best way to clean
I would wipe it down with that.
This is,
It does both.
this is a cleaner as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. It does not.
Any other tips and tricks?
The real one.
I have one very quick one.
Yes, sir.
I recommend using denim. I recommend you take the pants off first.
Okay, all right.
Did you hear that,
That's a-
Trapper?
Dwayne, great idea. Thank you very much. Mr. Zink.
One of the things that we've had a problem with around here is the after effects of ballasting. And a lot, what happens is you get glue and stuff on the rails, and with some of the abrasive blocks, you can't scrub it off. What I've started to use, or been using for quite a while, is a penny that I had flattened out by the Texas State Railroad, and I started to use it as a scraper, and it actually eventually formed a notch in the penny, because the penny is softer than nickel steel rail, and it works real good at peeling stuff off, like parent glue and paint and things like that, from the rail, and especially on the inside of the railhead.
Okay.
I got a couple of comments for that. First off, be more careful with your glue. Secondly, yeah, shorts across your copper is not good. One of the things that I'm using, first off, Bright Boys, I've thrown them all in the trash. I never use those things anymore. They're too damn corrosive, and that when you wipe anything with your track with a Bright Boy, it pits your track, which doesn't do anything but increase more arcing. Okay, so that's not a good thing. What I have gone to use is one of two things. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and in the tools section, they have what they call machinist blocks. They're a square about this long and about this thick and yay wide. And that machinist block comes in different grits. Some of them are extremely fine. And that's what I use on the top of my rail to clean it down sometimes. Or how many of you are familiar with when you're sharpening your knives, what's called an Arkansas stone? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. An Arkansas stone is extremely smooth, and I will use that to wipe across the top of my rail, and it polishes the rail rather than scuffs the rail. Dwayne.
We use for polishing and doing fret work. Once you put a neck together, you've got a level fret, so you've got to file them all flat and then recrown them and polish them. One of the things that we have available, you can get it from Stuart McDonald. It's stumac.com. They have what they call fret erasers, and they come in various grits, and they're like from 1,000 grit up, and they're meant for polishing work, and it will do a much better job on your rail than if it's, like I said, the Bright Boy is too abrasive. All it ends up doing is putting gouges in your rail heads, and that ends up filling full of dust and oils and everything else, and it makes the problem worse.
Exactly right. Yes, sir.
Harbor Freight has a block with 4 different grits on it, and you use that to polish.
I would do again what Dwayne's talking about. Whatever grit you're looking at, make sure it's 1,000 or higher. Yes. Okay. Yes, Russ.
You ever seen the fingernail buffer?
Yeah.
Those work really good. I used on my in-scale
Yep.
track.
Yep.
It's got just enough to get everything off of it, and it's got a handle on it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Any other tips?
Yes, sir.
Just kind of offhand, between the hands.
Various and other sundry tabletop, your plastic tables like this back here. I have grandchildren, they like to draw and paint and use markers. The hand sanitizer does wonders on a lot of stuff like that.
Okay.
Gets it off your fingers, off the tables.
Good. Good enough.
Yeah, it happened to come out just
Yeah.
found it when I needed
You
it.
just gotta find it.
Anybody else? Okay.
If you're painting something and realize you've now gotten flecks of acrylic paint on your dockers, ask me how I know this, Windex will take it out.
Wow. There was another one that you told me once before about removing Bragdon powders and out of your shirt. I am less than I used to be. I was talking to somebody else. I'm down 40 pounds in the last 87 days. But this used to be a whole lot more pronounced than it was. And when I was working at my modeling, I would have a tendency to get stuff across the belly of my shirt.
This is a nice demarcation line.
Yeah.
Your shirt's weathered from there up.
Yep, yeah. From the tabletop up and very, very heavily down along the tabletop, right?
Put a little bit of white vinegar in a bucket, put your shirt in there and scrub on it a little bit and it'll take it right out.
So good to know. Good to know. All right, guys, it's now, it's 11:06. We're going to take an 8-minute break, 8 minutes, 11:14. We want to be back in here. We're going to kick off with Eric Lewis and his presentation on maintenance of way equipment. All right, 8 minutes. Hustle, hustle. And who's now moved down to Spring because of job-related activities with the Union Pacific. There's some history that this guy's been involved in that is very unique. I had the opportunity to spend some time with him last night over dinner, and he was telling me some inside stuff. This gentleman had intimate knowledge and activities because he was in charge of the donation of 4141 to the Bush Library. He handled all of the movements. He handled all the preparation. He handled the crane lift. He handled everything from start to finish on that move. He was giving me information about the funeral train and things that were going on. And the fact that the railroad was running, unbeknownst to anybody, drills for 2 years?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 years prior to the funeral train having to be actively run, they were running drills behind the scenes where they would just pick out a train and designate it as train X, if you will. And that was going to be the funeral train. And had all of the activities. Can I mention the sleeper train?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Some of the stuff that that happened behind the scenes that he was involved in, unbeknownst to anybody, 2 hours before the funeral train left Spring with the president's body on it, there was another train of identical type equipment that went that same route 2 hours as a sweeper train with Secret Service and everybody else on it to make sure everything was done. And they dropped Secret Service agents off at different places and nobody knew they were there. Okay? After the funeral was over with, in the cloak of darkness, all the people who had gone to the funeral that were Dallas-Fort Worth related or needed to catch flights out of Dallas-Fort Worth were boarded on the train in College Station and brought into Nay Yard, where they disembarked and got with their security details and went somewhere else. Nobody knew it happened. This is the inside kind of stuff that this guy's involved in. He started out in maintenance away. Now he's in management and works in public relations and community affairs.
No, public projects.
Public projects, thank you. And I would urge you to pay very close attention today because there will be an opportunity for you to receive a challenge coin that this guy designed for his group that's specific to the Union Pacific. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Eric Lewis with the Union Pacific Railroad. Mr. Crumpton.
He's not here.
Oh.
We want to wait until he's here?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, again, if I start to trail off and start talking quiet, you can't hear me. Just say something, throw something at me, or cuss at me, and I'll respond appropriately.
Before I get into the presentation, give a little more of my history, I want to go over something that's coming up that UP is going to be putting on down in the Houston area in December. Those of you who are familiar, we've got our veterans locomotive. We have active chapters, employee resource groups at the company. One of them is the Union Pacific Veterans Organization. The Houston chapter is one of the most active out of the entire system. And we partner with Toys for Tots and the U.S. Marine Corps at Ellington Field every year, collecting toys for tots. Last year, we were 75% of all donations in the Houston area. Our organization was. We're looking to go beyond that this year. And one of the opportunities we offer is sponsorships. Now, I'm not asking NMRA or Texas Western to sponsor anything because we're a 501c3. Y'all, Texas Western's a 501c3, so is NMRA. We're not doing that. This is for individuals that would like to an opportunity to ride on some of our equipment. There's certain levels of sponsorship. You'll get some type of a plaque or maybe a chrome-plated rail as a thank you. And then based on your level of sponsorship, and I'm sorry this is so small, this is our PDF, you get so many tickets on the equipment to ride the train through the Houston complex. We would basically onboard you you would park your car at Ellington Field or wherever we're doing the drop-off.
South of Houston,
on the Galveston sub. Buses would take you to our Setagast intermodal ramp in downtown Houston, where you would board the train, and then it would take you out onto the Houston East Belt, cross over onto the Houston West Belt, and come down and transition onto the Galveston sub and run you back down to the air base or wherever we do the drop-off. And there's going to be like coffee and snacks and stuff on the train, but you'll basically get to run through the Houston terminal. So if you've got questions or interested, come see me afterwards. I can give you guys some information, or at least get your emails and then forward you guys this documentation so you guys have it in case you're interested in participating.
As a personal note, when 4014 was here, I had the opportunity to tour those cars and go on there and conduct business on the equipment. And I'm here to tell you, it is absolutely the most elegant, stately train you've ever been on. You're not going to find anything any better. It's absolutely amazing, the appointments inside those cars. So.
Okay, so as Mike said, I started with Union Pacific back in 2010 as a maintenance away employee after I graduated from Texas A&M University. For the Longhorns in the room, please be gentle. I'm going through battered Aggie syndrome right now. I hired out as a trackman. Within 6 months, I became a thermite welder there in Bryan, and then spent probably about 2 years there. And then I went out to a track program gang on a tie gang where we traveled across the 5-state southern region installing 2,500 ties a day. After that, in 2015, I was offered an opportunity to join the Public Projects Group in spring as a ARSA, which is a union supervisor position. That's kind of the transition between a labor employee and a management employee. I had April of 18, I became a management employee for Public Projects with territory in Arkansas and Central Valley region of California. Met most of you guys during that time because I was living in Fort Worth. And that's how I became a member of this club. October of 18, headcount reductions occurred as the company pursued the precision scheduled railroading model. I went back on my seniority as a welder, spent time out there on a traveling PI gang doing construction projects. We were actually the Tyler Depot, we totally realigned how that track infrastructure looks in front of the Tyler Depot. That was one of our projects. And then in July of 2020, I had an opportunity to come back into the group in a different position with Public Projects, and that's where I reside today. Short version of what we do in our group is we babysit federal, state, and local agencies, essentially. When they have a project where they have a railroad crossing they want to widen, add sidewalks, close, or put a bridge over underneath us, or do anything encroaching on our right-of-way, we manage the railroad piece of that project for them. So the Southeast Connector, Loop 820, that's one of our projects. The upcoming I-30 Canyon project over there by Reunion Tower, that will be something we're heavily involved in as well. So just to give you guys some, for those of you that go through Roanoke and Keller, the State Highway 114 project, those are some of ours as well. And these are just some pictures of what I used to do, because pictures of what I do now is basically yelling over the phone. I don't think anybody wants to see that.
Did I forget anything? And this is my fiance, Mandy. We'll be married in July.
And you proposed to her where?
Toys for Tots event in front of the Veterans Locomotive.
Is she an egg?
No, Sam Houston Bearcat. So the first week of football season was a tense one in our household. So what I'm going to do today is, as I said, I'm 4 maintenance away. I'm going to give you guys some information about various pieces of equipment that most of you have probably seen. Some of you may know what it does. Some of you have just been curious what it does and why we have it. And that's really what this is going to be. Very high level look at that. It's also a demo of the clinic that Mike has asked me to do for the convention next year. All of you are NMRA members. You know other NMRA members from other divisions. I want to tailor this for the group. So my intent is to present this, get feedback from you guys. What do you not want to see? What do you want to see more of? Or something that I forgot? And then I can include that. There's not a whole lot of video in this presentation because I'm still acquiring that from the field. But there will be more video presentations of how these machines work when we do the clinic in August. I think Mike may have me come back in the spring to kind of give the final look at what that looks like. So feel free to ask questions as we go. I'd like to get through the whole thing, but if we don't, it's more important to me that I get your questions answered. So we're going to start off with section equipment or headquartered equipment. Basically, what that is, it's equipment and gangs that stay in a specified territory. Case in point, my territory when I was in Bryan was from just south of Valley Junction all the way down to the bottom of the Hardy Toll Road at 610 in Houston, and then up the Palestine up to just north of Huntsville. That's headquartered territory. Now, I was one of 3 gangs, but we were able to respond to any part of that territory as needed. And we're going to go over some of the common equipment that you see on a section gang. Some of it does overlap to other work groups that we'll go over as well. The grapple truck, we have high rail and non-high rail versions. These wheels are what makes it a high rail and basically allows it to ride on the track. These trucks are used to carry rail, scrap material, OTM, which is other track material, deposit ties, and we've even used them when a piece of work equipment breaks down on the track and we can't move it to the mechanics. We'll use these to ferry the equipment into the mechanics. We had a tamper, which we'll go over later, the workhead broke and the entire assembly had to be taken off. And we couldn't move it because it was in the ground where it broke. So we had to bring this in, unhook, lift it, put it on the truck, drag it out and get the other one out there. We've also used them for firefighting. Back when if everybody remembers when Texas, I think it was 2011, most of the state was on fire. The Bastrop fire was the biggest one in the state. At the same time that was going on, we were fighting a fire in Magnolia, Texas. We outfitted these trucks with specialized water tanks and pumps, and then hoses ran up to the crow's nest here, and they would run back and forth along our track, hitting spot fires while the Forest Service was fighting the main fires. Oh shoot! I know my welding truck fully outfitted as it was like $800,000. It didn't have. It had more than what this one has. I mean, you take the cost of the truck by itself, it's probably $250 to start, and then all the specialized high rail equipment's $10,000 by itself to start. Not to mention the hydraulics and the PTOs that have to go on the vehicle to handle that equipment. So I'd say anywhere between 5 and 8 for this, depending. Then we have specialized backhoes. They look like a normal backhoe, but they're special attachments and tools that we use. This is our finger and then our thumb. This thing is great for putting in ties. We love them on section gangs because we can put in the ties very quickly and without really any effort. Otherwise, digging them in by hand is one of the most back-breaking things I've ever had to do on this railroad. But they also remove ballast, dig out mud spots, deposit new ballast, and they essentially just ride on the rail out to the work site if they can't get there riding along the right-of-way. And all they do is they weld tie plates underneath the bucket, upside down, and that's what keeps that bucket on the ball of the rail. And then they just swing along, and then in curves, they'll fold up their finger and their thumb, drop it on the low side, inside the rail, on the low side of the curve to keep them from sliding off, and it'll just drag the inside of the ball as they're going through the curve. These are probably some of the most underappreciated operators on the railroad because you can't just put anybody on one of these on a railroad track and expect to be proficient. I mean, you got to know what you're doing. So, but these are not exclusive to just section work. They're on construction gangs, tie gangs, rail gangs, derailment response. They're everywhere. Most of them are contracted out by third parties right now. We don't have too many internal to UP. This is a typical section truck. This is the one that's probably going to be closer to $800,000 fully outfitted. Can carry up to 5 guys in the truck, and it's used for installation of ties, repairing gauge defects, replacing rail, de-stressing rail, hand tamping, surface and line repair if the surfacing gang can't get there and the track's out of surface. They'll at least get it up to a speed restriction that the trains can safely operate until the larger surfacing gang gets there. And then relief inspections. When we have severe weather events like temperature swings, where the temperature swings 40 degrees in either direction within a 24-hour period, we have to do emergency inspections. Typically, most territories only have 3 track inspectors, but you have to do that inspection. You have to inspect the entire territory. So these guys will get sent out to supplement that so we can get it done within an 8-hour window.
Yeah, is this a UP10 gauge GAGE or GUA?
So that's actually a railroad term. That's bothered me since I've hired on.
It's
But
always got to spell that way?
every official railroad document, including the Federal Railroad Administration's terminology, is spelled GAGE. I do not know why. It has bothered me since I've hired on. I was an English minor in college, so that bothers me to no end. But that is how it is spelled. Yeah.
We do any repair in this truck, do welding, some welding, you said rail repair,
They-
truck repair.
They can be equipped to weld. Typically, you're going to have like a arc welder for the concrete crossing boards because they're framed in steel. When I say rail repair, they can haul rail, cut it out, drop it in, and bar it up, but they're not equipped to weld it. That's a completely separate labor agreement. Joint bars, it's no different than the rail joiners you guys use. Fish plate with the bolts and all of that. We're not a big fan of joint bars because they fail. They can cause derailment. So typically, a joint bar is an emergency install, and we go out there and weld it. We call this a 6-pack because it can fit 6 people. So
Tightly.
very tightly.
Dug deep for that thing there.
Yeah. They suck in the summer. Trust me. They're smaller trucks. They can do some of the same things that a section truck can do on a much smaller scale. You typically see these on track construction gangs, program gangs, and in yard gangs as well. Go ahead.
How often is it more efficient for you guys to travel on the rail versus on the highway? With a high rail versus using it on the road? And why would you make that distinction?
To travel into a site?
If you're going from point A to point B, is it more efficient sometimes to travel high rail or on the road?
It honestly depends. These trucks are restricted. So this truck is restricted to 25 mph on the rail. Same with the section trucks. The smaller just pickups are restricted to 45 mph. So if you're going from Bryan to Spring, it makes a lot more sense to just take the highway because you're having to interact with train traffic en route as well, right? Okay. They will kick you off the track for a train every single time. So especially if they can't get
and just pull up to a crossing.
Pull up to a crossing, pop off, let a train go by, come back. If they can't get you in a siding or you can't get into a house track somewhere. There was an instance where I had to get to an emergency. I was at the bottom end of the Hardy Toll Road. I had to get up to Conroe for an emergency. I was in a smaller pickup. It was Friday, rush hour traffic in Houston. Looked at the CAD screen. The Palestine double main was clear all the way to Conroe. Called the dispatcher, sat on, and I cruised right by my section gang that was waiting in traffic. So in those instances, it's doable. Yeah. But most of the times, it's better to just drive out. Okay. And then obviously some work sites don't have road access, so you have to high rail it every time.
By the way, his pickup truck is outfitted with every possible communication device you could possibly think of, CB radio included, and he mounts his computer there, so he's actively knowledgeable of every single thing that's going on in the entire UP system from the cab of this truck at a glance. It's an amazing setup. Anyway.
As I said, I spent most of my time as a welder, so I'm very partial to this group. I personally think section gangs don't need to exist because we can do it all. Most welders don't like putting in ties, but we can do it. This crew is specialized, and their trucks are specially outfitted purely for welding work. So you got an arc welder that's on full demand. We've got propane, and for our torch cutting, we do not use acetylene. We use propane and oxygen. Acetylene is dirtier than propane, and when you're doing a thermite weld, you need the cleanest components possible. Otherwise, defects get introduced into the thermite and the weld and can compromise the integrity of the weld. So we do not use acetylene. It's only propane. We use that for our torch cutting as well. This here is a rail puller. They're a specialized piece of equipment that can pull rail in place with about 10,000 tons of pressure. What we use this for is what's called a CWR adjust, or continuous welded rail adjustment. What happens in the wintertime to rail, as it flexes, it can break. We've had breaks up to 6 inches. We go out, put a new rail in, we just added 6 inches of rail to our infrastructure. But what's going to happen to that when the summer hits? That rail is going to start to run, and we're going to get a kink. So we have to go out and pull all that excess rail out before the rail hits a certain temperature threshold. NASA engineers helped us come up with a program to monitor that, so it goes into a database every time we put in a new rail, and we know when it's about going to hit that threshold based on the climate. And we get out there and we basically cut out, we put in 6 inches, we cut out 7 because we need an inch gap for the weld, put this machine on, knock a bunch of anchors, which are the clips that you'll see on the base of the rail up against the ties, and then we just start pulling that rail to about an inch. Shoot the thermite, let it cool to, I think, 750, if I remember correctly. Pop that rail, pop that puller off, rail's good to go. We just pulled all that excess rail out. They're great machines, but they're dangerous machines because if it slips, it's like a bullet down the rail and it will kill you. Never happened, fortunately, but we made a ton of money with that machine as welders. Another thing this trucks do is the frogs, which is that transition point in the switch, obviously. We have to weld those up to maintain them. They take a beating. Most of them are manganese because they can take more of a beating than standard steel can. So we go out there and we weld manganese. It's a pain because we can't get it above 500 degrees of temperature while we're welding it. Otherwise it will start to crack and we just destroyed the frog. We also use it to weld crossing boards in place when we're doing crossing projects.
Speaking of frogs. Yesterday, Eric and I had an occasion because of the 23 convention. Eric is working very diligently to help us liaise with the Union Pacific on several different projects for the 23 convention. One of which is to bring in either 2 or 3 of the Union Pacific heritage locomotives to put on spot in Grapevine for the convention time. And so in order for us to be able to make sure that that was going to happen, we got to go to Grapevine yesterday where we met and measured a frog to see if it was capable of receiving those 6-axle units into the siding there at Grapevine. Explain how you determine the number of the frog. That was very interesting. I mean, just the measurement part.
Okay. First thing I did, there was a metal plate on the side that said what size it was. But but that's not all.
That was so interesting. I'm telling you.
But they're not always there, depending on the age of the frog. They end up falling off underneath the train half the time. So the other place it's printed is on the point of the frog down in the flangeway, but that gets worn out and rusted out. So what you do is you go on to the point of the frog, which is the running area. You find a point that's 1 inch or 2 inches wide from side to side. Then you take your tape and you go up until you find it grew an exact inch longer or wider. Then you measure the distance in between, and whatever that number is what your number frog is. There's another way you can do it with a number 2 pencil. I've never understood that. You just roll it around and do some weird thing. I don't know how that works. It's been shown to me, and I got a headache afterwards. So I don't.
On a 6-axle requires a little more flange way.
Correct. We will not currently UP. I will not say the industry in general, but UP cannot, and will not run a 6-axle locomotive through the turnout side of anything less than a number 9 frog. So
Does that relate to our numbers that we use for our urban?
I would assume it does if you're doing everything to scale, which is what you guys do. But I can't speak for that. That'd probably be more of an NMRA.
Number
question.
10 is a number 10 for you.
In theory, it should be, yes. Yeah.
How big, you mentioned gap in the rail. How big is the gap before you guys have to get out there and repair?
So if it's barred up, we can't have any more, and it's based on class of track. So class of track is speed. So class 1 is 10 or less, 10 mph or less. Class 2 is 30 or less, and then 3, 4, 5, and so on. Depending on the class of track, the gap in between the railheads when it's barred up cannot be any more than anywhere from a quarter to a half inch. And there can't be a mismatch of any more than a quarter to a half inch, again, depending on speed. We really don't want any gap at all. Some argue that gives you some play if it's barred with temperature swings. It gives you, but if you do that, your bolts start to wear out and you get what's called a stripped joint or a pull apart, and we're back out there pulling the rail anyways. And it can also destroy your bolt hole. And we get what's called a head wet separation or a bolt hole crack. That flexing can cause that crack to come up through the web of the rail, and that ball of that rail will come right out. When it's a broken rail, doesn't matter what the gap is, we got to get out there and fix it. If it's got good supporting ties underneath and it's not so wide, you could essentially put a 10 mph and let trains run over it. We don't like that because you get that lateral movement that's not secure. So we typically walk trains over until we can either put a temporary bar on it or the crew gets out there to replace it. So we don't really like rail gaps at all if we can. Yes, sir.
So is the employee who has responsibility to check that called the road drawing?
So that's the track. They've got different names on different railroads. We call them track inspectors.
Check a track. So I live by the Baird subdivision over at Wheel.
Okay.
Major
Right.
east west.
Mm-hmm.
How often is that thing checked?
So based on, and it's all based on class of track, right? So the class of that track, it has to be, the main line has to be checked 3 times in a 7-day period, I believe.
And they high rail it?
They high rail the whole thing when they do it. And so what they'll do is if that guy, that track inspector probably has about 100 to 150 miles of track, not including any sidings or yard terminals or whatever. So what they'll do is they've got a playbook that they schedule. So they won't ride the entire 150 miles in a single day unless it's a heat restriction, cold weather restriction, or flash flood restriction. Then they have to run the whole thing. That doesn't count as their typical FRA inspection. What they'll do is they'll split it up into
So he'll do one block and they'll run a train to the previous block and then he'll check that one.
Yeah, or he'll do it right behind the train, but he'll do 50 miles on a Monday, he'll do 50 miles on Wednesday, and he'll do 50 miles on Friday, whatever his schedule may be. And then in between, he's doing switch inspections, which have to be done every 30 days, and then inspecting siding tracks as well, and then going into the yards and doing inspections
One
there.
of the things I'd like to talk about is when I go to Saginaw and Railpan, that diving there, that thing moves like, I swear it moves like this much.
So interesting thing about Saginaw, that is a project we're conducting with BNSF right now. They're going to be double tracking through there. The plans we've seen is that diamond's actually going to go away altogether. There's going to be complete realignment of us in BNSF out there. But yeah, interlockers or diamonds, we hate them for that reason because they take a pounding. But that's some of the things they measure, right? Most interlockers you can't go more than 40 through. You're not, depending on its angle and the style that it is. So if it's good for a 40 mile an hour, that pumping may seem excessive, but per FRA standards, it's acceptable. But we do measure the vertical movement of our track and our infrastructure as well.
Talk about, for a second, while you're talking about this, talk about the track changing out all the diamonds at Tower 55 last year, and all the equipment that was involved, and how many pieces of equipment, how many people, and how many days, and all that.
Shoot, I don't have any visibility. I can talk a little bit. I don't have much. That wasn't one of my projects.
Yeah,
so I don't have
but
visibility.
I mean, typically.
Because
when they moved and how they set up the diamond, assembled it outside, and then lifted it in place.
I can do it. I'm going to play this Weldon video while I explain what he's talking about, if it'll open. I'm not connected anymore. Oh well. Yeah, who's gonna pay the
Brandon,
first 2 months?
Brandon, pay that bill.
It was a video of us shooting a weld in Tyler. The guys there were videoing us shooting a weld. We didn't know it. And then next thing we know, someone sends us a link and it's on YouTube and it's us shooting a weld. So what Mike's talking about is last year we replaced all the diamonds and the frogs at Tower 55. When you do a project like that, it is essentially, someone said snap track earlier, but that's essentially what we do. We build everything off site, we clear a site, build everything, weld it out, get it ready, ties, plates, you name it. Then we bring in specialized equipment. Typical, just like a straight piece of track like this, you could use with a track hoe. And they either affix chains or what's called a panel boss, which is a hydraulic clamp that clamps on and picks the entire thing up. When you have a quad interlocker like Tower 55, you got to bring in specialized cranes to lift it all out at once and then put the new piece in. And that's a very complex, complicated, and stressful, organized chaos, if you will. Because anytime especially at Tower 55, it's very dense, and you've got the connecting routes on either side, which tightens up your work area. I can't remember what work window we had for that one. I know when we did Tyler, we were out there for about 28 hours doing Tyler. So imagine what Tower 55 was like. You know, I'd probably say it's probably closer to 36 hour window.
If you watch the ballet, if you will, of them replacing all those diamonds at Tower 55, it was on the tower cam, the virtual rail cam. You could watch the whole thing live as it happened, and they literally had 6 of those crawler cranes attached to the diamonds, and those crawler cranes were moving and swinging this whole apparatus into place and setting it down, and it aligned out perfectly when they got it done. It was amazing feat of engineering.
Yeah, it's a very, the Tyler job is actually on the Cotton Belt YouTube site. If you want to see, that gives you a look at what a project like that looks like. Nowhere near the scale of Tower 55, but many of the same components. And it literally is organized chaos. You go out there and you think we have no idea what we're doing, but it's everything has a movement, has a reason, has a timing. As much as I enjoy my current job, I do miss the big jobs like that. This is my attempt at photography. This is one of our track inspection trucks. This is outside Magnolia, Texas. There's nothing fancy about these trucks. They're 3/4 ton with 1 ton suspension. What people don't realize is the turning radius on these things suck because they have to cut the axles in for the wheels to stay on the rail. These are the only trucks we have to do that with. All of our other trucks, nothing changes on the axle or the wheelbase, just on 3/4 ton trucks.
Is there computer equipment that tells them if something's out of gauge, or is he just driving, he or she just by feel?
He's driving by feel. There are certain attachments that certain trucks have for that reason. It's not anything that we've deployed on every truck. It was something we tested in Houston, and I believe I think Chicago is the other place. We found it to provide more issues and false readings than what the truck feel. It's amazing what you can feel on these trucks and the sound. You can tell a gauge change by the sound of the rail wheels on the rail. It changes, and you can tell, oh shoot, that's wide gauge. You get out and they go check it.
I wouldn't think that would put enough stress on the track compared to a 2 mile long, 6 engine train.
No, it doesn't. It's really just to test things that you can see and feel. We have other specialized equipment we'll get into that runs across our network that does exactly what you're talking about. When they have a gauge, when they hear or feel the gauge issue or the profile or the cross elevation issue, they have specialized tools hand tools that they can get out. One's a PTLF, or it's a precision brain part. Basically, it exerts 9,000 pounds of pressure. They put it between the wheel and they crank it to replicate what the dynamic force of a locomotive would be. And then they measure what that change is. And then they can establish if they need to slow order it, take it out of service, or do a repair. But again, it's when you do these jobs long enough, when you're on the same territory long enough, sight, feel, and what you hear tells you more than what some of our technical stuff can do.
Familiarity with your system.
Yeah, it's and we also know where our problem areas are, right? The railroad infrastructure is a living, breathing thing. You know where you're going to have problems based on.
Are they always pickups as opposed to vans where you have to have a little?
Say that again?
Sure.
Are they always pickup trucks? The track inspection vehicles are always pickup trucks.
Always?
We have other specialized vehicles that you've probably seen that are doing a different type of inspection that are vans, and those will be coming up here in a minute. Yes, sir.
Gas, controlling the gas. Control. Is it continuity, is it sure that it's connected, or is it just done by the inspector?
As far as continuity of the track,
You do like a continuity test, is it a heater somewhere, it's gonna break a line like a broken wire, or is it?
so yes and no. Our CAD screen for dispatchers, it shows, so let me back up. Anytime there's something on the track, it's shunting. Basically, it's cutting that circuit. That's how we know something's out there. So when you're looking at the CAD screen, when you see a high rail that has its shunts turned on, which activates the lights and gates for them to get across the crossings, that'll throw an occupancy or a red line on the CAD screen. A train will do the same thing. That's how they know where it's at in that block. If there's nothing out there and you get a circuit issue, such as a broken rail or a wire is broken, it'll throw an occupancy out there on a screen that otherwise doesn't show anything being out there. And so the dispatcher will say, hey, I've got a track light out here, but I have no trains out here. Basically, it's the same concept, but we have that. On our at-grade crossings, we have indicator lights that are constantly on. When they lose main power or there's a malfunction at the crossing, they go to a strobe mode, and that alerts train crews coming through. They call it into the dispatcher. They issue the proper speed restriction at the location. Signal ops is notified, send somebody out to figure it out. So there's different methods, and now with PTC, a lot of it's just on board the locomotive now as well, and it's feeding back to our back room in Omaha and giving all that information out to the necessary parties. It's nothing as advanced as you'd think it is, but there are ways that we do that. And then the signal guys can get out to where that track light is, and then they have a way through the wayside equipment cabins, which is the intermediate and absolute signals and the at-grade crossing signals. They can go in and figure out between here and here where that issue is. So they can go out, and it's a 30-mile block, but they can pinpoint based on using some of those things where that is in that 30-mile block. Knock it down to maybe a quarter-mile range. Some of the hand tools we use, spiker, rail drill. This is what we use to drill holes in the rail for joint bars. Spike maul, rail saw. This is the puller, profile grinder. The shear is over here. And then one of my favorites, fire snake or diesel rope. We use this in the winter in areas where we can't get the puller, where rail strips out of a bolt. Basically, it heats the rail, and then we walk along the rail with sledgehammers beating it to help it grow. And then someone draws a short straw to stick that bolt in there while everything's still on fire. But first time we ever did this was actually south of Hearn Yard along Highway 6. I mean, we're right there by the dealership, and we're doing it like nothing's wrong. Next thing we know, Robertson County Fire Department shows up because somebody called and thought we were fighting a fire out there. Fortunately, we got them before they put our fire out.
What do you use to do the fire? Is that a gas line, or what is that?
So fire snake is something that's it's a how do I describe it? It's almost like rubber, but it burns off, right? And it's soaked in a special compound. It's not as good as what we use as diesel rope, which is basically we just take 2 ropes, soak them in buckets of diesel. That's where they stay.
Right.
And then we light them on fire, and then just the diesel burns off, and it's a hotter burn than a fire snake.
Light up with a fusee.
You just set up the rail?
Those are outlawed.
Are they?
We don't use fusees anymore.
Really? I didn't know that.
Really? Usually you have one?
Yeah, because you have train crews that don't, that probably like yourself, that can't throw worth a crap and end up starting a fire. So we outlaw them for that reason. True story. Yeah. Yep.
That's what happens when you've been gone.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That shows how old we are.
Yeah.
Now we'll get into the program construction equipment. This is your curb gang, tie gang, rail gang, surfacing gang, types of equipment.
Can these trucks ever derail?
Yes.
Have they ever derailed?
I've done it 3 times. And it is not fun.
No, it isn't.
If you know what you're doing, you can do it, but it is not fun.
I was riding with a crew, Langston Bay crew. And I was in the truck when the guy derailed, and it is.
Yeah, you're
all over
throwing
the
everywhere.
place.
Yeah, and the worst place that's ever happened is on a bridge. That's the scariest thing.
Oh, oh.
That was a scary one.
Yeah.
Ramp trucks, people have seen these before. These are specialized pieces of equipment. The chassis are typically Freightliner or Western Star cabs and frames and chassis. The motors inside are not stock motors. They're custom built by Brandt Power Systems for these applications.
Is that couplers on the front end?
These vehicles are capable of hauling up to 12 loaded rail cars. Depending on the type of material. Ties are going to be lighter than ballast and steel components, but they can haul up to 12. What they do is they go out ahead of the major program gangs to distribute ties, spikes, plates, anchors, sometimes crossing boards, and then they'll also be used to dump ballast in certain locations as well with the ballast cars. And then they come in behind the gang to help pick up all of the scrap material as well. So if you've seen the Dwayne Joseph Top Guns or the green UP Top Guns, typically what those are for is to be assigned to these and be used to distribute material. This one UP calls a rock brand. I don't know why, because we would never use a grapple claw to distribute rock. But those trucks are typically assigned to the ballast trains. I don't know why. These are assigned to steel gangs and tie gangs.
This used to be the job I used to work trains, where we dumped all the bags of tie plates, spikes, buckets of spikes, metal buckets of spikes. Yeah. But now they get to do it.
Oh, yeah. Because you guys didn't know what you were doing.
Job, yeah. We followed the maintenance way.
This is what's called an OTM tracker. It's a specialized track code that is dedicated to Brandt truck and rail car service. This machine, I'll back up real quick. I think I know. When it's in transport, it rides on this specialized trailer behind this truck. When they're ready to deploy it onto the rail, this thing will raise up, and it's on two separate rail systems, and crawl its way to this platform and fix itself to the platform on this truck. Then this truck will get set on the rail, go pick up its cars, and take off to its location. Once it's on location, this is a lift, and it raises up to the height of the rail car, top of the rail car, and then this machine walks off onto the rail car. And then it can start to walk between rail cars as needed, shift itself around on that dual rail system that's built in. It's
on the rail, on the top rail.
On top of the rail car. It's not, this one's currently in a squat position, which means it's for transport down the rail, so it's down, lowering the center of gravity of the car. When it's not in squat position, this is one of the rail systems that it runs back and forth across. This is some of the clamps it uses. This will actually be up, and this will be clamped on top of the rail car for it to run back and forth and dig stuff out of the cars.
What's the height on that when it's deployed like this?
When it's deployed like this, it's not any more. It's not any higher than a auto rack.
That's what I was getting.
Yeah, it won't be any higher than an auto rack.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is basically the wheelbase of that machine, is that enough to span from one car to another, or is there something that goes spans the gap between two cars so it can walk across?
Yeah. So what it'll do is this will walk to the end of the car, clamp like this, raise up, then this entire piece will roll to the other car, clamp. It will make the walk across. It will clamp back down on the car, on the new car, raise up, and then this piece will come back and clamp to the car, and then it goes to work again.
You can't see that from the road very.
No, it's a pretty cool machine. They're very finicky, but they're a great machine to have.
That's distributing wood ties, right?
This one is equipped to distribute wood ties based on this claw here. There's magnet fixtures for steel.
Concrete ties versus wood ties, and where and why you would use them.
Concrete ties are typically where we have them today is high speed routes. So like the Amtrak high speed route between Chicago and St. Louis, they're there because they don't deteriorate as fast as a wood tie if everything around them is maintained properly. We have them on the Moffett line. They're on the Roseville sub. We have them on the Canyon sub through the Feather River. We've deployed them there because getting in and out of those areas to do maintenance is very prohibitive because of the cramped quarters, and there's nowhere to really get out of the way during train events. So we deploy them in areas where there's less opportunity for a work window to occur. They're also on the Kearney sub, on the triple main coal route in Nebraska, and the Marysville sub as well. It's because it's flat, there's no mud, there's none of that, so that's a great application.
Not a lot of Texas things. I really don't see a lot.
The Dallas sub between Tower 55 and Arlington, it goes past Arlington now. I think it goes just past Arlington. I think it stops at over there by Browder. I don't know what town that is. So the Dallas main in Fort Worth between Tower 55 and Arlington has it. The Palestine double main on the Hardy Toll Road has them as well. So there are Texas locations. They're not many. We have been putting them in Louisiana because it's swamp conditions, and that eats up our wood ties like crazy. They're not all the way there yet. They're still testing these composite, which is like recycled plastic. They're a pain because they break in the middle a lot, real easy. So I don't really know what we're going to do about Louisiana. So yes, sir.
Yeah. Just run on the Rocky Mountaineer from Vancouver to Banff.
Mm-hmm.
And they made an announcement. They are replacing all of their wood ties, all their concrete ties back to wood because the concrete does not handle the climate conditions up in Canada.
Correct.
And so they are going back to wood for that.
Yeah, because you get, and it kind of goes against what I said about it being on our Roseville and our Moffett route, right, where it snows. The difference is the density of snow and how long the snow is sitting there, just melting and permeating the infrastructure and the top and whatnot. You don't get that in the Sierra Nevadas, Cascades, or the Rockies like you do up there.
Yeah,
and that may be why they're in the ice conditions as well.
The other thing on concrete rails, you see them on Grapevine Railroad.
Yeah.
They put in the commuter rail there, and they did that. They converted that all to concrete.
They're very popular on light rail and commuter lines because of the maintenance costs associated, and you're not running the tonnage that we are, right? So they're very cost effective in those applications as well. Sir? It depends on where it's at. It's on a case by case basis. If there's existing concrete out there today, yes. If there's not, then there has to be a justification for it, because the transition from wood to concrete can be a maintenance nightmare. New construction that we're doing internal to UP, again, if it's existing, we're doing it. If it's not, we're not using it.
That's interesting. That would be a step that all our
Mm-hmm.
we also procure any grade below 1.5 basically money to replace all the time.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily understand why UP is doing it the way they're doing it. I sometimes question their methodology.
Every railroad has
Yeah, I personally don't think concrete ties and a tight curb is a good application because it's almost impossible to repair the gauge once it's out without putting in new ties. Whereas a wood tie, you can repair it a couple of times before you have to replace it. Concrete, concrete, you break the shoulder on the concrete tie and a tight curb, that's it. You're never getting that gauge back. But we do that in a lot of locations on UP, and I've never agreed with that implementation. But that's a good question because I really don't know why our construction and design teams don't do that.
So they're failing to ask for opinion.
Well, they fail to ask a lot of people opinions. If you're not on the 19th floor in Omaha, you don't know what you're talking about. Don't let this go out.
It's already, already done, dude. That's what I was just fixing to say.
No,
easy.
I've said it. I've said it to Scott Morris. This is a new piece of equipment that's been deployed in the last 2 years called an MOW train. Some of you may have seen a Herzog variant called an MPM, or multi-purpose machine. We used to contract out for those. We figured out it might be cheaper to have our own fleet. And so this is what we've created. This is actually on an SD 6-axle chassis. I'm not sure if it's a 38, or more than likely it's old 40s. It's run
custom built
by Relco.
Okay.
They are deployed with what looks like intermodal cars. They're a little deeper, a little more robust than an intermodal car. And then there's rails that deploy in between the cars that allow these machines to run back and forth. We use them to set out ties, pick up ties, clear vegetation, pick up debris after a weather event, pick up scrap steel. They've got buckets. You can do ditch work, use them for snow clearing, ballast retention, riprap installation, you name it, we use it for that. And we've got about 5 of them that work the system right now.
So you don't have the green cars for riprap?
We still have those for derailment trains and other larger
You know,
projects.
we used to have pull on the side dumping.
We still have those on the derailment trains.
Does UP contract for vegetation control with companies? I know Mobley used to be a company that did that out of Kilgore, or do you do that yourself in-house now?
It's a mixed bag. It depends on what type of vegetation control it is. That's a slide we'll get to in a minute.
Okay.
On some of the stuff that is utilized. We do have some of our own in-house equipment now, but there's a lot that we still contract out as well. It just depends on the application.
That was my question, basically, how many millions of gallons of Roundup you guys use?
I don't have access to that, but I can find out. But vegetation control for this is basically they put shredders or flailers on these attachments to clear tree line and whatnot. We're not doing any application with this train.
What is, I don't know, what is, how is it different from this regular locomotive, and why would they not store it?
I honestly don't know. That would make more sense to me than custom building something like this. There's really no difference as far as I'm aware. It's same motor, same hauling capacity, all of it.
The first one built was, Herzog built the first one for themselves.
This one's a little.
They wanted it different than a regular locomotive. Then when UP bought one, they bought it from them.
So, well, this is different than the Herzog design. This is a Relco design. Us and CP, Canadian Pacific, are the only ones that have this one. Herzog still runs theirs. I don't know, do y'all have any of these yet? BNSF?
I know we have a lot of Herzog, but I think those are all being modified and Progressive Rail and Iowa.
Okay.
The CPN.
Yeah.
I think they've said just SC4 yet. Whatever they do the things we do.
Yeah.
They kind of got rid of that part of it.
Yeah.
I missed those.
This is our track renewal train. It's currently idle. It hasn't been used in several years. It was the last job it did was actually here on the Dallas sub in Fort Worth, between Fort Worth and Arlington. It's basically a one-pass train. What they'll do is they'll deploy a rail train ahead of it to lay rail and have it welded along the track, and then they'll come in and bring this machine in. This takes out the old rail, pulls out the old ties, wood ties, sleds the subgrade to make it even and clear out trash. And behind that, it starts depositing new concrete ties and dropping rail right on top of the ties in a single move.
Why would they not keep using that method?
We're not deploying anything quite to that scale anymore. We're not doing full conversions like we did. It was originally brought on for the high-speed route between Chicago and St. Louis is where it was initially deployed. And then it went into Wyoming on the coal route. It went to the Feather River Canyon. It did the Roseville, and then it's done some other places here in Texas and on the network. It's currently idle at Harsco. It's their machine. It's not ours. We lease it. It was a very impressive machine to watch. And then they would follow it with a ballast train, dumping ballast, clean ballast on top of it.
So that is.
My understanding is we leased it. Our name was all over it in addition to Harsco's, which would make you think we owned it, but it was exclusively leased to us. And so,
And you go up, you sign up for how many of these trains you want, basically you sign up a year work for the train. And there's a limited number of these, so you know,
yeah. And I think there was some long with Harsco for the one that we claim is ours. It's really not. To your point, it's Harsco's and they can lease it to whoever they want. Yeah. Yeah, it was a very impressive operation. Spike puller, it's basically these jaws come down, pull the spikes out of the rail, and it just keeps going. You can do it both sides at one time, We'll just do one side at a time with the second machine doing the opposite rail. It's got a turntable underneath that allows it to jack itself up in the air, spin it, and on the opposite direction. And it's also a crew transport, because if you're just doing one guy, you can fit 2 other guys in there. Those are at the front of most production games. Anchor, spreader, and squeezer. These are anchors. When you're pulling out a tie, those anchors are there to clamp down tight to the tie to keep the movement of the rail restricted during temperature swings. And so when you're putting in a tie, it's very hard to pull that tie out with those anchors tight. So this machine can do both squeeze and spread. It's just simply a setting, a switch, and then how these are facing these teeth. And it goes in, spreads the anchors. The next machine behind it will come pull the tie out. Another machine will come put a tie in. And then at the end of all of this, after it's spiked and gauged, same machine doing the opposite move will come and squeeze the anchors back tight.
What regions of the country, from your perspective, cause faster track deterioration? Like the north, because they have 4 true seasons, or like the south, because we have all hot summer, or what's the worst?
I would honestly say that Louisiana is probably the worst on the UP network.
Is that because of the moisture?
Because of the moisture. High moisture environments tend to where we get the deterioration the most. My BNSF counterpart may disagree with that, but
Where we have the biggest trouble, where you have the biggest challenge, we showed from the road that heat up the rail, we get the rail, and then right there, trying to install it. And what we would see that, I think, for about 90, we put a heat orders and slow railroad valves. But 10 years ago, we have 50 breakers for railroad. And what we did is we put the legend anchors on it. And that made a big difference.
if you're talking about the rail deterioration and impact, temperature swings is probably the biggest. We have that.
So the surface temperature of the rail is above 90. In general, a Class 1 railroad would put a slow order on any train.
Depends on the region. The rail neutral temperature, which is the rail that's static, the temperature of the rail is static, is different from territory to territory. So it's going to be higher down here than it would be, say, Minnesota, right? So 90 degrees could cause a sun kink up there, whereas 90 degrees is. I've had rail breaks of 3 inches at 90 degrees in Houston. It just depends on the temperature and what the rail neutral temperature is.
The reason you get those you have train that goes in a dynamic braking or using the air brakes and it comes up against the switch or a bridge that's really anchored. You'll push that rail with a bunch of tension at that switch and the anchor got right. That's the
You'll see where the anchors and the spikes slide on the rail, there'll be shining marks, and that's what you're looking for, is that. Because the switches, bridges, and crossings and interlockers are considered fixed structures. And they, to his point, when they come in and they hit that dynamic brake, all of that is being shoved to that fixed structure. We did one in Dime Box that BNSF Coal Train on our track did that coming up to a crossing, derailed, was an empty coal train headed into Caldwell. Well, they just kept notching it up instead of looking in their mirror to see what's going on behind them. Oops. And at notch 8, they were going 10 miles an hour and struggling. And the whole time, every car behind them is coming off, and the couplers and the air never broke until it got to a bridge. It was 2 miles of track we had to replace. We emptied 3 derailment trains, 2 out of Fort Worth, 1 out of San Antonio, and had to bring in a tie gang off system to come in and do the rest of the repairs and rebuild 2 bridges. So some kinks are not to be messed with. And that's not knocking BNSF. It's our guys do the same stupid stuff. It's just that's why it's a critical thing. If you're talking about roadbed deterioration, climate like moisture and snow is going to do it faster than anything else. Desert conditions can cause profile deviations because as the moisture gets sucked out, that dries up, creates voids, and we have issues there. But it's less of an issue than where you have snow involved. This is basically a magnet on wheels. It picks up all the old tie plates, rail, anchors and spikes, and dumps them in there. Then we dump them and sell them for scrap. Nothing fancy here. This is a scar fire in locations where you got mud or dry ground and the tie just deteriorates underneath you and you don't have a void to put the tie back in, this machine comes down with these teeth, chunks everything up, creates that void so that tie slides in easier. Creates a lot of dust.
That's something you use in a lot of, wet conditions that pumps the mud up.
That's an undercutter. That's a different machine. We'll be getting into that as well. These are the tie cranes. This is some of the concrete ties, concrete tie renewal we did in recent years. These machines run out in front, deploy ties in front of the gang, basically where the ties are marked, where ties need to be installed. Then another one comes in and stacks the scrap ones along the right of way out of the way for the ramp truck and grapple trucks to come pick up. And then this is a trip or a TKO. This is a machine that actually removes and installs the ties. These lift the rail up to get the rail clear of the tie, slides the tie out. These are teeth. They open and close. They can pivot, so they can angle it however they need to get it in there. Pull it out, put a new one in. This lets go of the rail and it moves to the next location. There's typically one or two in the front removing, depending on the size of the tie gang, and then there's two in the middle of the lineup inserted. Rail lift. What this does is it lifts the rail above the newly installed ties so you can slide plates back in. You've got a ride along, also doubles as a crew transport. This is the newer tie, and then you got the walk beside, where they push a button and they control it with these wands, and it walks the location, raises it. They use the wand to slide the plate in and move along. Pump tamper, also known as a switch tamper. This really just captures ties that are low after install, gets them tied up against the rail for the spikers. Serves no other purpose other than to get stuff tight.
Is that the one that has the fingers that go down?
This is, yeah, that's what these are here.
The only thing that is it raises the tie?
It raises the tie and it puts ballast underneath to keep the tie up. So what it's paddles on those teeth and it squeezes that ballast up underneath to keep that tie up. And then the spiker gauger, this rolls along. It's got a wheel underneath in the middle, measures gauge, will help pull the rail to whatever gauge we need, or 56.5 is what we want. That's railroad standard. And then it feeds from a rail down into these claws, opens up, claw drops it to the tie, and then this hammer comes down and drives them into the plate, into the tie. Huh? I know, right? I don't.
Is there also a schedule, say, so the track is inspected, it's good to go for months and months and months. Does someone kind of say, hey, let's just do routine maintenance on this thing one day just as prevented? Or y'all just wait until the track inspector raises his hand and say?
So that's what the track inspector writes up, regular maintenance, and that's what the section and the welder do, and the headquarter welders do. This is when you're getting so many defects in a certain territory, it's cost prohibitive for the local maintenance to do it anymore. And so these guys, they write up a project and come out and schedule it and come out and do this in mass. We essentially black top with ties in most cases.
Does this take priority over revenue runs, or can the other departments say, hey, I got a really important thing, it's got to go?
These guys get scheduled work windows, but I've been out there numerous times where we're supposed to get the track at 8 and we don't get it till noon because we're waiting on these 3 trains, right? They never put us out in front of Amtrak. They never put us out in front of Z trains, which is UPS, Amazon, stuff like that. These gangs in what's called peak season, which is October to February for most railroads, they get put on lighter use lines for work because we have to keep those lines open for Christmas holiday traffic. That's where our peak season is. Yeah. I'm not sure what our threshold is because I had a 17 mile an hour or 17 mile long subdivision that needed it the day I got there, and it was 10 years before they did it. And so, I mean, I was out there every week putting in ties and replacing rail on it. 6 months after I leave, they run a tie and a rail gauge through there. But I made a lot of overtime. Am I running long? Or I need to stop?
Your questions are good for national.
Okay.
We may need to make this a 2-hour clinic.
Okay. If I need to stop, I can stop.
Well, you guys want to keep going?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The thing I was going to mention is
I'll try to make it faster. Sorry.
The thing is, where did the determination of 56.5 inches come from? Do you know the answer to that?
56.5 inches is the width of a horse's ass. And that's,
The wagon.
that would haul the wagons, and that's where we came up with the gauge.
The Roman chariots the axles were 56.5 inches across. And that's the determination of why rail standard gauge is 56.5 inches. It comes from Roman chariot days. So.
Why wasn't it?
Narrow gauge, they use donkeys, I don't know.
Why isn't it that?
Sorry.
I couldn't answer that question.
Europe waters way different than the States.
Back to, there we go.
This is a rail heater car, used exclusively for curb and rail gangs. When you're installing your rail, it has to be at the right temperature to install for that territory. Otherwise, you're going to get nothing but breaks or sun kinks when the temperature swings. So what this does is it heats it up and helps it run ahead of for install to get it to that temperature for install, so you're not coming back after the fact. It's run off propane, or at least ours are. Adger and cribber. Basically, when you're doing a rail gang, you're not touching the ties. You're just replacing the rail. So what this does, comes in, digs out in between the ties, any excess ballast, and then tears up the top of the tie, gets debris, and creates a flat surface for the new plates to go on. If the tie can handle that. If the tie is completely shot, they just skip it. But they can't skip too many in a row, otherwise you get gauge issues. The Badger crane, this is what brings the rail in and out for the steel gangs and places them for install. So it'll come in and it'll swing out all the old rail, and then it'll have the middle rail in, and it'll come in behind the Adger and those guys and drop it where it needs to be on the plates, and then all the other machines follow. This is a speed swing. It's probably one of the scariest machines we have because it's derailment prone. It looks like a loader, but it's a fixed frame. The articulation is on the boom, so it can run 180 degrees. We use it for snow fighting, as what's seen down there. We put magnets on it. We also put rail dogs, which is actually what picks up the rail with wheels, and that's how we feather rail, long strings of rail in. But they're pretty much exclusively used for steel gangs. This is the tie plugger. Like I said, when you're doing a rail gang, you're not doing anything with the ties. You're just putting plates and rail back on the existing ties. So there's a compound that we inject into the ties if we're not using straight up wood plugs. It expands it's a foam that expands once it's inserted, and it becomes very hard, and it allows the spikes to fix to the tie once the rail and everything is in.
So it's basically filling up the old tie holes, the old spike holes.
Spike holes, yeah. Or if it's a void in there, it fills that up too. This is some of our surface and lining equipment. These are tampers. This is a Jackson, and this is a Mark IV. Most tamper operators love the Mark IVs. They're not making them new anymore. They're all rehabs. The Jackson is pretty much the new standard model. This new one has actually got what's called an autopilot on it now, where the operator can set it and then get off, and it will index on its own, and they can watch with their guy on the ground. Generally don't like doing that because if it gets away from you, you're never getting back on it. But it is a feature that these new Jacksons have.
That could be a new movie, Runaway Tamper.
But what these do is they pick up the track, line it, and then drop those teeth down, put ballast up underneath the ties, set it back down. We use that to get cross elevation, which is where one rail is lower than the others, reestablish super elevation in our curves, and take dips, which is called profile, or line deviations out of our track.
Doing that, are those the things that have, I don't know if I'm thinking something other piece of equipment, but they have like 2 or 3 sleds with wheels and they connect them back to
Yes.
the damper?
So that's what this is up here. It's just in the transport mode.
Okay.
But all these bars with the wheels on them, they fold back and roll up, and that's what's out in front of them. That's what they use to help line. It measures what's out in front of them and brings everything in. They also use the photo on my lead slide looked like I was looking through the scope of a gun at one of these. That's actually a laser. That was sitting a quarter mile out, and that is the fixed point that the tamper is working to. And so you have to set it up, and it sets off these lights on that cart. Once they're all illuminated, the tamper has its straight line fixed, and then as it moves, when it loses one of those lights, it tells the computer which way the track needs to go to bring it back in line. This is our continuous action tamper, Dynacat. This is one variation. There's several different variations. It's the same thing as the others, much larger, and it's more production focused, so it can do more footage in a day than the other ones can. It actually is 2 independent machines attached. This will run out in front and raise and tamp the track. This will actually has the lining machine behind it. And so as it moves forward, this one is lining and then comes up, and then the other piece moves forward. There's a much larger version of this by Placer that most people have seen. I know BNSF uses those all over the place. We don't have any on us, but BNSF uses the much larger Placer models. Yep. Stabilizer. We don't have stabilizers anymore for reasons I don't understand. But it helps compact things, so you're minimizing traffic speed restrictions behind these gangs. This is your ballast plow. This is actually in Fort Worth, just south of Tower 55. They come in, they bring rock into the track for the tamper to use to get the track up in line, and then come back in and clean it up and make it look all nice and pretty behind it.
Is that typically new track construction, or is that also done to add ballast?
If you need to add ballast, new construction and maintenance. So if we got to add ballast, we'll either get a ballast train to come in, or we have specialized rotary dump trucks where the beds flip and they high rail, and we'll deposit rock that way in specific locations if needed. Yeah.
Dress it up.
Not quite that long, but same concept.
So after the ballast train goes through, then comes through the green train, goes wild.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in a minute. These are track lifters. We don't use these very much anymore, but they still exist. Last time these ever got deployed for us was the Arkansas and Oklahoma floods a few years ago, where we were literally just raising the track to get it out of the water. But we use it in undercutter operations. This dozer has a blade underneath, and it's basically taking all the spoils out from underneath the track that are causing mud to come up and pump and deteriorate our ties. Then they'll drop this back down, and they'll dump ballast, and the surfacing gang will come through. These are typically used in like spot conditions, but we don't use them much anymore.
So you put fabric down after you use that before you put out?
No. The only place I've ever seen us put fabric is our greasers. I don't see us doing it anywhere else anymore. This is a gopher undercutter. There's a chain here. This thing rides on the rail, but this is how it's transported. This eases out and goes along the edge of the ties and digs out the ballast shoulder. At the same time that this is inserted underneath the ties and is running ballast to it, and then it runs it to this conveyor and shoots it off to the right of way to get all the spoils out. This is also used for spot work. It's not our full multi-mile use. We don't have very many of these anymore. They're very old, as you can tell, and we're just kind of milking them along. We can contract some of it out. We actually have our own specialized undercutters. Loram is another company that gets used quite a bit. We have our own machines, but other railroads contract out. This is another spot one. It's an attachment to a track hoe, high rail based or non-high rail based. Does the same thing. Goes in, cleans it out. We dump new rock in and lift the track up and get it back in. There's different sizes of these. The bigger, the better. We did it on the Hardy Toll Road on the double main and forgot to put up plywood, and we were launching rocket cars on accident. So, this is our machine, the ballast undercutter. The Loram machine's a lot more involved because it's got a cleaner associated with it. Ours does not. But it's a chain, probably not yay high from top to bottom. Goes in, cuts everything out, drops the entire structure to the deck. Then we come in with a miniature tie gang behind it to get any of the fallen ties that it may have kicked out, and then we run a ballast train behind it and clean it up. First time I ever dealt with one of these, they were giving us a safety briefing for those of us that had never been around one that said never get next to it, always stay behind it. As they were telling us that, we heard this loud sing, grabbed a knuckle that had gotten tamped underneath one of the ties and launched it. And we never saw it hit the ground. It went into the tree line and we never saw it hit the ground. So it's got some power behind it. This is a Loram ditcher that we contract out. I'm sure you guys do the same thing. Getting water off of our right-of-way is meant to drain. Water is a bad thing for the railroad infrastructure. It deteriorates our ties and can cause rail and tie issues. So having good drainage on either side helps us do that. And all this does is just digs it out and deposits it.
You always use that after grading the bottom.
That's right. That's right.
They still use line, get water out.
Use what?
Line.
Line, remember we use that trains.
We don't anymore, no. And then this is a ballast train, as Trapper said. So this is a push button one. So this operates the doors, they're solar powered, there's battery packs on them. That's what's used on our production ballast dumps. Herzog also has GPS remote control ones that we contract out. We still have, hang on, we still have the old school lining bar ones that you have to use, but those are only on derailment trains. We don't use them for production deposits.
It's not fun when the doors are they won't open all at once.
And when you're as small as me, I'm pretty much useless when it comes to this.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm basically hanging with my feet above the ground trying to get that door open. Air dump cars, these are used specifically for riprap deployment.
Riprap is placed further down the grade to assist with the
It could be right up against the shoulder of the ballast. It just depends on what the territory is and what it's needed for.
At Ranger Hill, we had to fill in ballast because there used to be an old wooden bridge underneath there, and they just started pouring riprap. These will derail all the time. Because every time you open that door to pour it, it just starts taking everything with it.
We actually did one, and one derailed down into the dump while we were shoving, and the general manager said, "Screw it, close the air valve and keep going. We'll get it with the rest of them." So,
What's the size of the material of those? Is it quite large or is it?
it really depends on what they need. And they're typically pretty large. I wouldn't say anything bigger than a Volkswagen Bug. I've never seen anything that big. But, TV size, maybe a little bit bigger.
The one we dumped, that I was talking Ranger Hill, they had, what do you call it, with, has the plow on the front. They were running down the hill to spread it down, and he turned to go back up the hill again. He landed on one of the boulders we dumped, and he spun on top of it and went back down the hill backwards until he could get traction. So, yeah.
In an attempt to speed things up, I'm gonna start skipping slides. Loram rail grinder. Some of you have seen those.
You have a picture of it in action?
No.
It's brilliant show whenever it's doing it.
That's usually because the rail actually starts hitting.
Yeah, so you get shelling on the top of the rail that can cause an insert defects or cause flat spots. And so what that does is it helps mill it down to get those imperfections out to increase the longevity of the rail. It also works on the inside gauge where you get rollover, and it helps pull that out as well. We'll move on from these. So we're using LiDAR to help determine and predict where we need tie replacement and subgrade work now. We don't own any of our own machines. We contract out with firms like Insco, Railworks, and GREX. This is a gauge restraint vehicle. So it goes and measures gauge only in high curve density areas on our network, at least that's where we use it. It basically exerts the same force of a locomotive under pressure to see if we have gauge issues and what we need to do to correct it. Again, we don't own any. We contract them out. Holland's one of the ones we use. Snooper truck. It's basically a cherry picker on the rail, and we use it to inspect our bridges. Go underneath and whatnot. Rail inspection vehicle. This uses a sonar type technology. It penetrates the rail and feeds back to the computer, showing imperfections in the rail where potential breaks could occur. Marks them, and we go out and we repair the rail to get those defects out before they occur.
I'm sure dispatchers love this.
No, they hate it. Because we put out a default 30-mile-an-hour slow order anytime one of these go out, because the alternative is a 10 mph or an out of service, and then we pick it up behind them as they run. This is new. We now have box cars that have geometry testing in line with the train. They don't measure everything that our next machine shows, which is an EC car. This is something we're testing right now. I think we've got about 10 of them right now. And we're deploying them to test them, and basically it feeds back stuff to our maintenance away desk in line with the train.
Is that a revenue?
It goes in revenue trains.
Revenue train?
Yeah, it goes in revenue.
And it would be loaded with?
No, we don't load it because all the computer systems inside.
Gotcha, okay.
But, so if it pulls into a yard, it has to be cut out because you can't hook it or kick it. You would probably be the one. Then we have our geometry cars. We have 2 of them. They are self-powered, but we no longer run them under their own power because we figured out they can get across the territory quicker than being towed by a train crew. And we also get the accurate dynamic loading measurements of a rail car and a locomotive in real time by pulling instead of going under our own power. That, and I think one of them blew the motor. These are actually built in Germany, and it was going to cost us just as much to order a new one as it was to ship it over, get it done, and bring back. So we said, screw it, we're just going to tow it. And now we tow both of them. They got to get across the entire network every 6 months for FRA. Air Force One, it's basically airport snow removal equipment with high rails now, and we use it to blow snow and ice from switches and Sierra Nevadas and Cascades. And we also bring it down to the coastal areas when storms come in and blow sand into our switches to blow all that out. Flanger. Its main purpose, while it does clear snow, there's blades below the main blades that run in between the railheads. It's to keep the snow and ice level down so the air hoses don't get hit by chunks of ice and break apart and cause an undesired emergency. That's its sole purpose. But it will do just regular snow clearing as well.
You let the snow in the rail and melt it, you get the tightly in the rail, then you expand it and start to put the rail up.
Yeah.
The more clear you got, the more ice.
Yeah. Jordan spreaders, someone talked about that earlier. That's our main snow fighting tool. All of our Jordan spreaders are currently based in Roseville, for the Donner Pass, Roseville subdivision route across the Sierra Nevadas. We don't have any anywhere else on our system. All of our snow equipment is stowed in Roseville on the off season. When the season starts, flangers and Jordan spreaders and the specialized Jeeps go up to Truckee and are staged at our command center up there. We have full living quarters up there and a command center for 24/7 operations during snow fighting removal. Then obviously our rotary snowplow, these things are pretty much legendary. I think everybody knows about these. I don't need to spend too much time on
How many do you have?
We currently have, I think, 4 SP original still. They stay in Roseville. And then we have 1 operational in Cheyenne.
Are those typically deployed as a last ditch effort?
Yeah, when the flangers and the Jordan spreaders ain't doing it anymore, or we get major drifts, or the snowfall is just so fast we can't keep up, they'll call them up, stage them, and then they'll just send them out.
They said they didn't want to deploy because once they did, they couldn't do a spreader or a flanger after that. They couldn't get the snow over.
Yeah, those are literally last ditch efforts. They didn't get used this year. They got used numerous times last year. Brush cutter, it's basically a ballast plow with arms with shredders on it. This is one of the contract spray trucks that Mike was talking about. We don't contract this out much anymore. We will do it on industrial leads and lightly used lines.
Spray trains in
We have a spray train now.
Still.
This is our new spray train that we're deploying. Same type of locomotive as the MOW train. All of that is water, and one of these cars actually has the chemical in it. This is the mixing car, and then it sprays out the back. 25 miles an hour.
Don't get close to that road.
No. That should say fire control. These are our new fire cars. They've seen a lot of action in California in the last couple of years. We pretty much became contractors for the Forest Service in the last couple of years in the Sierra Nevadas and the Cascades. But these are located in Roseville. They don't venture off very much unless absolutely necessary.
Quick question. How are they operated? They have pumps on there? What's the?
Yeah, there's a pump system. This is your pump up here. There's a box on the top, that's your pump, and then they've got high pressure spray nozzles similar to what's on a fire truck or what you have on a fire truck at an airport, and that's what they do. And they just, yeah, we don't have very many up close photos because to get close to them when they're in use, you're somewhere you probably shouldn't be. So, and that's it. I apologize for running long. I'm sorry.
I think they like it. And we asked for it. Yes. You just have to provide.
So, one of the things that Eric is humble about, and he's not brought up, but I'd like to mention, this guy is an amazing artist. And
yes, you are.
and so I want to bring up a couple. I think there's 4 pictures that I want you to be able to see of his artwork of pencil on paper. Yeah, good photography work as well. This
is from his most sensitive side.
I need you to go outside.
He hasn't got the sensitive side yet.
This is a piece of artwork he did of all of the steam crew on 4014. Faces are recognizable, everything like that, at Houston this past summer. Okay.
I think y'all can recognize one of the people in the picture.
All right. Next picture. He took a trip on the Alaska Railroad last year, and this is one of his artist renderings of those locomotives. All right. Yeah, 2 locomotives, yeah. This is a bridge, and he's actually got on his Facebook page, if you look there, he's got essentially time lapse pictures of this drawing as he did it. And this is actually a bridge in Central Texas.
Yeah, it's just outside College Station.
Outside College Station. And he drew this, and it was a drawing given to.
So I've done retirement gifts. People that I work with know I do this, and so they'll sometimes hit me up to do retirement pieces. So this was before I put the wording that they wanted on there for the gift. So, but it was a bridge employee that this was done for.
And then the last one, we're talking about maintenance equipment and stuff. This is a picture. No.
There.
Look at this for a derailment and all the equipment that he's brought in and doing that.
This is actually not a derailment.
Well, okay.
It's
changing the trucks out.
They're swapping out the traction motor.
Traction motor.
Traction motor seized up, and so they're swapping it out and then getting it ready to deploy.
Awesome. Very nice.
Guys, this guy's very talented. Thank you again. Thank him again for his time. All right. Yes, we did run a little long. Gary, I'm going to give you the option. We can roll you to next month, or you can do your clinic today.
I'm happy to do it today if people are willing to stay.
Like I say, it's 12:45. It may be more advantageous for you if we roll it to next month, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's fine.
Now I feel even worse.
I did put some magazines up here from the Layout Design Special Interest Group and the Operations Special Interest Group for you to look at. I'll talk about it more next time then. You're free to look at them, but please don't remove them. I appreciate that. So I guess I'll talk to you next month. Okay?
All right. Yes, sir.
This came from you.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, does anybody else have anything before we adjourn? Okay. Guys, thanks for coming. We had a great meeting. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next month. All right?
Put the chairs up.
Take care. Thank you, guys.
No, it was just not cost effective.